brutal. That was brutal. Did you work on the marks?
No, but I worked on something in Lyle for Amstar years ago.
Oh, yeah.
That was a big case too.
That was contentious.
That Meyer was interesting. That was really the wrong thing at one time.
See, I
150,000 square feet in the middle of the neighborhood. Really.
Tim, do you realize I got some tires and they saw you 50%. Here's the first shoe, it's a white top. And they changed based on your
Oh, it was nice. For the White Sox. Oh, yeah. That was fun for the White Sox. We used to have those meetings down south. And it'd be like 9 o'clock in the morning, and Jerry Reinsdorf was walking with a big cigar. And we were talking to him. We didn't know anybody realized he was chewing on it. He was nice guy. Very nice guy. Sit up here if you want. There's seats up there. Did you see the you seen that Carvana? In the village. Oh, hell. Let's see how they're Carbonate. You know, Ann and I are
here for us tonight.
and so you see Bill, he's talking to him.
No, my button's been pressed. Very good. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Skokie Plan Commission for November 18th, year 2021. I know it's a cold and windy night, and we appreciate you coming out tonight. Let me read this into the record. And again, welcome to the Village of Skokie Plan Commission hearing for November 18th, 2021. This commission is an advisory body and does not make any final determinations, except for one exception, which I'll get to later on. The cases we hear are referred to the village board for final determination and action at their board meetings. They meet on the first Monday and third Mondays of every month. Tonight, the following guidelines are to provide orderly and civil discourse at our Plan Commission meeting. These guidelines are presented to provide an opportunity for everyone to be heard, but to ensure that everyone is heard and all relevant points are made without repetitious or extraneous comments. The chair and assistant corporation counsel will be using a standard of reasonableness and common sense. First, any person who wishes to speak tonight must sign in on the list at the back of the rooms. I have the list here with me before we take public comment. Second, the order of the proceedings tonight will begin with the petitioner who will present its project to the commission. The commissioners will then have an opportunity to ask questions of the petitioner. Thereafter, the plan staff will present the staff report, at which time the plan commissioners may ask questions of the planning staff. When that process is complete, individuals who have signed up on the list to speak will be called on for their brief comments. Please direct your comments or questions directly to the commissioner as a whole and not to the petitioner. Finally, the petitioner will be given time to respond to the comments and questions. Thirdly, individual statements will be allowed to the extent that they're relevant to the matter at hand, that they're not repetitious, not extraneous, not a matter of personal taste, or concerning a matter profited by the petitioner and not presented as testimony or argument. Finally, we ask that everyone is courteous and respectful of each other. We do not permit applause or other show of response to comments. We want everyone to be heard and still be sensitive to everyone's time here tonight. Okay, I also like to add that I've been on this commission for a long time, and I strive to give everyone who tonight a chance to speak their mind. All the commissioners feel the same way, that everybody has a voice in all these cases. So with that, we'll start our meeting. First order of business is to get the water up by the report. Second is, I'm sorry, Carrie Haberstash has a comment.
All right. So staff has been instructed to announce that until everyone in the room is wearing a mask over both the nose and the mouth, proceedings either won't start, but we're looking good from here, or we will stop and wait for adjustments if someone does not comply with the mask mandate. So thank you for your cooperation.
Okay. Thank you, Carrie. First order of business is the approval of the minutes of the last meeting. Do I have a motion to approve? Jeff, Commissioner Berman, thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
The minutes have been approved. First case tonight is case 2021-29P, parking determination. What is this? Guitar Delivery is a delivery service for online orders using only bikes and mopeds instead of trucks or vans, and they are asking the commission for a parking determination at their site. They don't have an address here. Oh, at 8034 St. Louis Avenue. This is the exception to the rule as far as final determination. The Plan Commission is the final determining body for parking determinations, and everything else goes before the Board of Trustees. This case will not go before the Board of Trustees. Yes, petitioner?
Okay.
Thank you. Good evening. Donna Pugh with Foley and Lardner, partner at the firm, on behalf of Getir US Inc. Getir, as you'll hear in more detail, is a fast delivery service for using e-bikes and e-mopeds, very sustainable. They have a whole sustainable model that they follow around the world. They are started in Istanbul, and they are had their U.S. launch last week, and you're going to be hearing a whole lot more about them, and we're excited that they're coming to Skokie. Basically, I just want to tell you who's here. Gavin Graham.
Could I interrupt you for just a moment? Counselor, is notice required for this case?
Notice is proper in that no notice was required.
Oh,
other
thank you
than
very much.
posting in the
Okay,
paper.
sorry to interrupt.
That's okay, I should have said that myself. So, just so you know who you'll be hearing from, we have Gavin Graham. He is the U.S. Operations Manager for all the launches in the U.S., all the way from Istanbul. Where's Jansu? Yes, raise your hand. Jansu Geret, International Expansion Senior Legal Counsel. And then Tim Doran. Tim, raise your hand. Okay, he's with the Transportation Planner with Fish Transportation Group. Tim has handled many, many matters in Skokie, you probably know that, and conducted the parking analysis. And then my colleague, Megan O'Connor, Land Use Planner with Foley and Lardner. Now, we're here seeking a parking determination for the property at 8034 St. Louis Avenue. We have an aerial here that we will show you. I think, maybe not? Okay, sorry.
Zip, zip, zip,
I'll
zip.
just set that up myself, I'm sorry. Wonderful, great, okay. All right, so just to give you an idea, it's obviously a warehouse type building, a very large building with a very large parking lot. So the use is, and we're encountering this in other municipalities too, it's a new use. Everyone's been hearing about these fast deliveries, they're blanketing the world, and the zoning codes really don't have an exact definition because, you know, they are kind of like a grocery store, but so they're kind of like a retail facility, but they're also kind of like a warehouse because there's groceries that are stored there and brought out, but for individual deliveries. So the community development director identified 3 uses, all of which are permitted in this district. So in effect, Getir is just happy that they know they're permitted, but the 3 uses are mail order, doesn't exactly fit, but conventional warehouse, which it fits more with, and then truck and freight transportation. Those were the 3 uses he identified, and that's why we need a parking determination, is that it's a bit of a gray area about exactly which use it is, but we know it's permitted. And so he thought it best to come before you to just make sure everyone was comfortable. So we're located in the M3 district, and as I mentioned, permits everything. When Mr. Doran studied the operation, he concluded that it is most akin to a warehouse, certainly not really akin to a trucking
Excuse me, Ms.
operation.
Pugh, would you get closer to the mic so we can record you?
I'm so sorry. I just feel like I'm looking through a wall, but
I know.
I guess that's just how it has to be these days. Can you hear me a little better now?
Yes.
Okay. So Tim has, Mr. Doran has conducted the most conservative possible reading on all the 3 uses, and there's still plenty of parking, but I don't want to steal your thunder, Tim. He'll tell you that in a minute. But right now, we want you to understand what is Getir and what do they do, and I'm going to have Gavin tell you that.
Okay.
And here's your clicker.
Sir, can we just have your name and address for the
course.
record? And I'll need to swear you in.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today, Chair. My name is Gavin Graham, and I am the Operations Manager for Getir here in the United States.
Okay, would you raise your right hand? Do you affirm that the testimony you give tonight is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So, Getir, as a quick overview of what we are, who we are, and what we do. Getir was founded in 2015 in Turkey as the world's first ultra-fast grocery delivery company. This year has been an amazing journey for everyone involved in the company, We've expanded out all across Europe, and as of last week, we are in our 9th country on this planet, the great United States of America, and hopefully we will be coming shortly to the village of Skokie. We were founded by Nazim Salur, Serkan and Tuncay, serial investors and entrepreneurs in Turkey, and we've since had backing from numerous VCs across the United States, from Sequoia Capital to Sir Michael Moritz of the UK. How does Katia work? Very, very simply. You get your phone out, you place an order on our app, our pickers and packers run around our store, they collect your groceries, and we send them out to you on our electric delivery vehicles, and we get them to you within 10 to 20 minutes. All of our stores themselves are what we call dark stores. We don't have customers come into the building, but they are laid out exactly as you'd expect a conventional grocery store. The way it works, as I just said, is very, very simple. It comes through to a terminal or a phone that the picker or packer has, and they run around the store. They collect your goods like a supermarket sweep. It's then passed on to the courier and driven to you in an electric bicycle or electric moped. Our all-electric fleet is one of the most important things to us, and it's one of the things that makes me most proud to be a part of Katia. The world we're living in is ever-changing, and to be a company delivering everything on what is an electric vehicle is huge. It's so important to me, and it's so important to us, our business, our brand, and our global ambitions. And yeah, that's where I'm at. Don, back to yourself.
Perfect, thank you. Mr. Doran.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. My name is Tim Doran. I'm the Senior Traffic Analysis Transportation Analyst for Fish Transportation Group. I've appeared
Okay. May
before
I
you many
swear you
times.
in?
Yep, I would love to.
Do you affirm that the testimony you give tonight is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you?
I do.
Thank you.
I don't think we have slides for me, do
Megan? Just that one?
we? Okay, that's fine.
And the next one.
So, for the parking determination, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, we did two things. We evaluated the site, which is primarily, my visits, primarily a warehouse operation, a number of small warehouse operations. So we evaluated the site in the M3 Industrial District by three criteria. One would be conventional warehousing, another would be freight transportation, and so on and so forth. And we determined that conventional warehousing in the manufacturing district is the most appropriate category for this, because it is warehousing. And it's a series of warehouses, small warehouses there. And according to your code, that would require one space per 1,500 square feet. It's 179,000 square feet. And the required parking under code would be 120 spaces. Now, the center is currently 90% occupied. So 10% of the center is vacant. In our parking determination in our study, we calculated that, and even with the 10% vacancy, the demand, we've got parking supply of 150 spaces there. If you went out there today, it's a well-kept, maintained center with 150 parking spaces, generally empty. The most we ever found parked there was 22 on 3 different visits. And we go out, we're very careful. We go out when we do parking counts in the lot. We do it during the mid-morning or mid-afternoon, not at lunchtime, not early morning, and not in the afternoon, late in the afternoon when people have already left. The lot is basically, essentially, very, very unparked, and there's about 25 spaces that are occupied in the lot. If we even looked at looking at the 179,000 square feet at 90%, and even looked at the 25 spaces times 1.1, which would bring the capacity up to 100%, there's still plentiful spaces remaining in the lot, plentiful. Now, that's actual operations. By code, as I mentioned before, in the M3 district, in the manufacturing use, it would require 120 spaces. So that's by code. And they're all generally speaking, very conservative. So there's plentiful parking out there at any time. Now, people ask, because I've done this a couple of times recently, parking studies, and what's the COVID factor? So the COVID factor, of course, according to the National Association of Realtors, that office space now is about 36 to 40%, somewhere in that range, back operating with people on site. So even if you took the demand times the 1.1, and this is all contained in my study, the actual demand times 1.1, which would account for 100% occupancy in the center of 179,000 square feet. And then you'd have capacity for about 3.5 to 4 times the demand that's out there now. So in summary, I'd be happy to answer any questions, but there is plentiful parking on site.
Is there any questions, Commissioner Matei?
So, if I understand the operation correct to the petitioner, this is both a online order and delivery as well as a come to the facility and pick up?
Thank you, Commissioner. No, it is an online order-only delivery system. You place an order on the app on your phone. The stores we operate are, in essence, dark stores, closed to the public, laid out exactly like a grocery store, but close to the public. You place your order, we bring it to you.
Great, so there is no customer go to the store as a
None
traditional
whatsoever.
store?
No.
Great. Second question is related to hours of operation.
Yep. So our hours of operation across the world, we do aim for around a 24-hour operation. However, 8 a.m. till midnight is our standard practice.
Okay, and just out of personal curiosity, your motorcycles or your mopeds and your e-bikes, are
Yes.
those your only form of delivery? We do have significant winters in Chicago,
Yes.
I'm curious.
Yes, you do. This brings us on at a great point, actually. There may be points where we do occasionally have to use some car vehicles, but one of the things that's most important to Getir is safety. Once weather gets to a certain level of severeness, we do not allow our riders to ride. We close operations if it gets too windy, which is a big thing in large parts of the world. I'm from the UK and it rains a lot. So when we have lots of rain, we also close them down when once safety is compromised, that's our key to us.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the petitioner? No? Do you have any further information to provide?
No, I was just going to clarify what we're requesting, I should have done that, is that we are asking that you affirm the findings of the traffic planner and grant the parking determination or approve it.
Okay, very good, thank you. Staff, Carrie Haberstash, will
Okay.
present the case.
All right, staff requests that the report is entered into the record as written.
So granted.
All right, thank you. As mentioned before, we're here for an approval of a parking determination. The applicant provided a parking analysis, a statement regarding the delivery services operations, site plan and floor plan. The parking analysis says that 17 spaces will be required for the business, since a maximum of 17 employees will be on site at a time. And there will definitely be there'll be a surplus of over 100 parking spaces for other users within the subject site. Staff has reviewed and accept the petitioner's analysis, and staff noted that overall parking availability for the whole building and site will be conducted during permit review. Staff recommends that the Plan Commission determine the off-street parking requirement for Getir at 8034 St. Louis be 17 on-site parking spaces. Any change in operations or increase in the employment level at the subject site will require that the parking requirement be evaluated. This determination is not transferable to another truck and freight transportation services use at this location.
Thank you. Any questions of the staff report? None? At this time, is there anyone in the audience who has a question or comment on case 2021-29P, parking determination at 8034 St. Louis? No one? Okay. And Ms. Pugh, have you, anything else have you heard the
Nothing.
staff report and you're well, in agreement with it?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yes. Thank
Very
you.
good. Thank you. Okay, I need a motion to, Commissioner Berman? Okay, do I have a second? Second. Thank you. Call for the vote. Commissioner Mitchell is absent. Commissioner, excuse me. Commissioner Quinn is absent. Commissioner Shaw.
Yes.
Commissioner Franklin.
Aye.
Commissioner Jibayahu.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Lakani. Commissioner Berman.
Aye.
Commissioner Matei.
Aye.
And I'll vote aye. So, again, the parking determination is final. We are the final determining body on parking determination. So this will not need to go before the Board of Trustees. Thank you. Good luck
Thank
with your
you.
project. Welcome to Skokie. There you go. Okay. Next case tonight is case 2021-24P parking map amendment. And the following case is 2021-25P site plan approval. And is the petitioner here?
Yes. Mike? IT is not my specialty.
Okay. Let me take this time to remind everyone to silence their cell phones, please.
Okay, so,
Yes,
may I begin? Okay.
absolutely.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman and members of the Plan Commission. Donna Pugh, partner in the law firm of Foley and Lardner in Chicago. Tonight, we're here to discuss a new Carvana vending machine at 9801 Woods Drive. I would request, Mr. Chairman, that the text amendment matter and the site plan matter be consolidated for ease of presenting the same set of facts twice, so that we could only present
Very
it.
good. That's not an unusual request, and the request is granted.
Yes.
And may I ask that would you give us the update on the notice?
I will. Notice is proper and correct for both cases.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And you are approving of consolidating
Yes, I
cases?
am.
Thank you. Now, I wanted to let you know who you'll hear from tonight. First, Brett Sassenberg, Senior Vice President of Retail Design and Development for Carvana, who will address you. But also with him is his colleague Brett Hanlon, who's an AICP planner. We have 4 expert witnesses, George Kissel, which I understand will be sworn in a minute. He's an AIA, AICP, land use planner, and president of Oakland Kissel Associates, Inc. We have Mary Lindberger. She is an MAI certified appraiser with Lindberger and Company. You'll hear from her. Emily Klingensmith, lighting expert with Schuler Shook. And Bill Grieve, he's in the back there, okay. Traffic engineer with Kimley Horn.
Okay, at
And
this
then-
time, may I ask your chorus to all stand up, and I'll swear them
There
in
we
a
go,
mass.
let's do that. And why don't everyone stand, not the other attorney, but in case you guys are called upon to answer questions, you might as well be sworn.
Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, would you raise your right hand? Do you affirm that the testimony you give tonight is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you? Very good, thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Pugh.
Yes, and I did want to mention that my colleague Mike Noonan is here and some other representatives from Kimley Horn, so we've got it covered if you have questions.
Okay.
I believe also, is Mitch Golds in the audience? Do we see him? No, okay. I thought that he would be here. Now, so I want to let you know that I played the video from 2 meetings ago when the matter was up for the subdivision of the green parcel. And I know a number of these people were here and had questions and were confused by who is doing what where. And so we thought we wanted to start with that, which is, because it is a bit confusing, and even we had some confusion about it. So starting in the north, that is the medical facility. That's a completely different owner, thank you, the orange. And the green is under redevelopment. It's largely vacant. There is still a daycare center, and there's I think a dialysis center, and maybe one other tenant in a, very vast project there that's mostly empty. And we know that redevelopment is coming, and I know that they were subdividing when they were here with you last. But we do not have any involvement with them. It's under separate ownership, and we are not involved with that project. And there did seem to be some confusion about that. Finally, of course, everyone knows the Optoma grouping, and then the blue, which is a 5.01 acre site that Carvana is buying from Mr. Goltz, the same person that also sold the green parcel last December. So there was one owner that's selling the green, sold the green, and is selling us the blue. So just wanted you to understand about that. Now, so what Carvana is not seeking is a rezoning or a enterprise zone or an opportunity zone. And again, in listening to the video and receiving all the emails, there seemed to be some thought that we were seeking a rezoning or an opportunity zone or enterprise zone, which we are not. What we are seeking are two things: a text amendment to allow an auto dealership as a restricted use in the existing OR Office Research District, which is an industrial district, by the way, and two, a site plan approval for a Carvana vending machine. Now, Carvana's proposal, as you'll hear, but I'm just going to summarize, is well below the bulk and height of what is currently allowed today in the OR district. The members of the audience at this prior hearing were asking what's permitted on this site, so we wanted to make sure that you hear from our expert witness, George Kissel, that the OR is the most permissive site in Skokie, allowing a building height of 180 feet and even a minimum of 80 feet for residential. So it's a very, very dense bulk, allows a lot of bulk, very permissive site, very, very permissive zone. And as long as adequate parking is provided, there's no maximum area. So if you did, and George will show you what, if you did a hotel or if you did residential, what you could build on that site as of right. Now, many of the emails expressed concern about Carvana impacting their views. Now, I'm a high-rise dweller myself. I know we all care about our views. No one wants that to change. But something is going to be there. Something is, it's allowed. It's a zone for that. And what we're proposing is a 40 by 40 slender tower pushed as far east as we can go, outside, as far away from the line of sight, and much, much smaller than what could be allowed there. So, as you'll hear, we really believe the impact is very minimal. Now, another concern expressed is in the many emails is property values. And that there's even several people have made the statement that property values would decline as much as 30%. So, for years, since '91, I've represented Old Orchard Shopping Center across the highway, and I've seen this area developing, in 30 years. And I remember when Optoma was built and all the fighting about the Holocaust Museum, and in all the time as all the changes have happened, people say property values and traffic, and yet I have not seen that come to pass. And so we have experts, though, who will speak to that both as to the property values and as to the traffic. So you'll hear from them. Now, this 5-acre parcel is part of a site plan with the orange and the green. And it dates back 40-some years, and it's very antiquated. The properties were all separate. And so we are each carving ourselves apart. As you know, the green is carved out with a subdivision that's leaving the blue, and each one will stand on its own. The green will go through the same process we're going through, the site plan review, when they decide what they're gonna build, and they'll come before you, just like we are, with the site plan, a separate site plan. So all three they will be separate. But the staff report carries forward a number of the conditions from the old approval, primarily relating to, in the future, there might be some roadway improvements and things like that. So those were preserved, and we've committed to accept those old conditions. So you don't have to worry that they're gonna get lost or go away. Chairman Luke, as I've mentioned, we have 4 expert witnesses here tonight who have been sworn. They have significant experience and credentials, which we've submitted their CVs, but I'd like to introduce their CVs again for the record in just a minute. Sorry about that. And shall I tell you their names again?
Please, for the record.
George Kissel, Land Use Planner, thank you, Mike. Mary Lindberger, MAI Certified Appraiser. Emily Klingensmith, Lighting Expert with Schuler Shook. And Bill Grieve, Traffic Engineer with Kimley Horn. May I approach and bring you their CVs?
Please, you can hand them to Marlene, please.
Yes, I will be happy to do that.
Thank you.
For the record. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd ask that these experts be accepted by Skokie as experts for the purpose of testimony today.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Now, I'd like to hand things off to Brett Sassenberg with Carvana, who will share Carvana's proposal.
Good evening, Chairman Luke, members of the commission. My name is Brett Sassenberg from Phoenix, Arizona, 4480 East Sunset Drive. Welcome to Carvana. I'm not sure who here may or may not have heard of us. I've been at the company since 2015. I've done a lot of presentations, and as I've grown with the company, so has the company grown with the country, so it's always exciting to come into a new city and notice more and more folks have heard of us. What we've done or tried to do is turn the car industry upside down. The industry has been typically dealt with at the brick and mortar level, where you go to the store, you're gonna pick your car, and then you're gonna finagle, get frustrated, maybe get angry, maybe you feel like you won a deal, maybe you didn't, and then you'll go home 9 hours later. We decided to change the model where you could shop online. Go to the next slide. So where you could basically take your phone, your computer, however you'd like to shop, peruse our inventory, maybe decide that day, maybe not, maybe go back to the phone at work, spend most of your time in the office on the phone looking at the car you want to buy, select your car, select your financing options, and then eventually have it delivered to your house or at one of our vending machines. That changed the industry forever. We were also riding the tailwinds of Amazon. We've often been called the Amazon of cars, where all of us now at least expect, as the last applicant showed, the option for you to bring it to me instead of me going to you. And there's no more price point barrier in the business model. I think homes are now being sold online, so we're all very comfortable doing it. So in our business, we decided, well, let's integrate all of the verticals for auto. We buy the cars, we recondition the cars, we post the cars online after reconditioning, which is tire and oils, maybe some body work. We have a patented photo system so that you can see that vehicle 1,000 different ways from Sunday, get comfortable with that. And then we were the first to offer a 7-day test drive policy, basically, where for 7 days you could keep the car, no haggling. If you didn't want it, we'd take it straight back. In the past, if you all recall, if you made that mistake, that regretful mistake of buying a vehicle that you didn't share with your loved one and you brought it home and you had to take it back, well, they bought it back at a discount. We changed the model. And that changed buying in the industry for good. In 2015, when I started, we sold about 6,000 cars that year. Last year, we sold close to 250,000, and we continue to grow. Revenues were in the hundreds of millions. Last year, $6.5 billion. As we've gone around the country, we've decided to land our vending machine, which is our pickup option. So if you elect not to have the car brought to you, but you want to come to one of our stores, a lot of people like to see the brick and mortar where they can maybe justify that we're real, you come to one of our special vending machines. The vending machine is only for someone to come and pick up their vehicle. You don't come to our real estate to shop because you've got 30,000 cars that you can pick from online. But we wanted a place for people to come. We wanted it to be a slight tower where we could maintain the cars and keep them clean, but also something where we didn't have them outside commingling with either employees or other vehicles, and in a way that we could present them in a very interesting and fun way, so that the 10 minutes that you actually spend with people for the first time in our buying transaction, it's a pretty neat experience. It's an automated parking system. I was telling our team today that ironically in the 40s, Chicago had one of the first in America. It no longer is here, but it's a very similar, in fact, identical concept. It's all throughout Europe and Asia, and we're seeing more and more of it now in the United States. So that's the mechanics. What we do with it is it's a very efficient way for us to deliver vehicles for those who come to us. You get a coin because we wanted to keep the fun going in the buying experience, and the nomenclature that was branded to us in 2016 in Atlanta as a vending machine. So we have our customers get a coin, we've created a slot, creates some noise and experience, and the car automatically comes down, slides into one of the bays, and then they drive off. So they've got their 7 days from the second they take off. The other option for us, how you get a car from Carvana, is obviously curbside. So we'll bring it to your house. And a lot of the customers we have throughout COVID, that became a huge component of us becoming an essential business, is because we were able to bring vehicles to all the first responders and everyone else that needed it. Pre-pandemic, about 50-50 came to a tower in a market where there was a tower. Post-pandemic, we're climbing back up to the 50-50. It probably fell off to about 10% on average. But now we're coming back to about half the folks come to the tower to pick up their car, because most people that are buying cars have kids, and they want to see that, or they just are interested in seeing the vending machine. They can also get it a little sooner than waiting in the stack for our home delivery. We recondition, as I mentioned, so we're fully vertical. We recondition the cars, we buy the cars, we offer financing for the cars, and of late, we announced a partnership with Root, so we're also going to start to offer insurance for buyers for the vehicles as well. So this is the new modern day way of buying vehicles and buying anything, and we've selected Skokie. Very excited for the site we found right off the freeway. Skokie is an amazing market for us as we surround the Chicagoland area with a handful of these towers. Unlike a typical dealer, we don't need a lot of units in any one market, but we do try to separate these. If you know, we have an Oak Brook tower down the street. Skokie's our next choice. We've brought a lot of folks here to hopefully help mitigate any of the concerns of our development, our site plan, our use, our lighting, and they're all here to answer any questions as well as myself. So hopefully after their testimony, everyone can feel free to ask us what you need to ask, and we have an answer for you. And then finally, I'd like to address a little bit of some of the concerns about our business and about our founder's father, starting with our founder's father 30 years ago. Our CEO, Ernie Garcia III, was in his, he was 10 or 11 years old, had nothing to do with the concerns that his father may have been dealing with 30 years ago. That's as much as we generally say about that. They're unrelated, they're father and son. He's not a board member, only a shareholder, and we're a publicly traded company. And then as it relates to other issues with the company for licensing and tags, as you can imagine, dealing with multiple DMVs across the country, a very established way of buying cars as you try to disrupt it, and a pandemic, make it complicated. You've got titles you're chasing from different banks, you've got DMV folks that are still working from home that you're chasing, and we try to address all of those concerns immediately as they come up so that our customers can get the best service possible, and we'll always strive to do that. The numbers, again, are slight. They're in the, call it hundreds, even though we sell hundreds of thousands of cars. Since our inception, we've sold over 1 million. So those are growing pains. This final slide, I believe this is our final slide, right? Basically talks about the nuance of why we're not a dealership, even though we have a real estate play. We don't have service, we don't do that. We only sell late model used cars. We don't have fuel pumps on site. We don't do the, Frank to the service desk kind of intercom servicing. It's basically a way for us to prep a car, clean it up because it may have transported in the weather, put in the tower, and deliver it. That's the extent. You don't generally come back unless you're returning the car to a Carvana, because if you buy a late model car, you can go to the manufacturer's dealer for any warranty items, for example. So we're not your dealership, but we fall in the category. Again, my name is Brett. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have about our business model, as well as our team here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, we're going to go to George Kissel, and he's orchestrated with the various experts, so he'll have the next 4 speakers here.
Let's see. All right, good evening, everyone. My name is George Kissel. I'm the president of Oak Rent Kissel Associates with offices in Chicago. I'm a licensed architect and a certified planner with 40 years of experience in planning and zoning matters. I've been accepted as an expert in planning and zoning in the courts of Cook, DuPage, Lake, and Will counties, and have appeared before numerous administrative review boards throughout the Chicago metro region. So this evening, I'm going to provide first a little bit of background and history of the site and its context, and I'm going to describe the proposal as well as some of the potential impacts of the proposal from a planning perspective. So starting out with the trip down memory lane, this is an aerial photo from 1951 of the site. The site was originally occupied by International Minerals Corporation, and here you can see just the beginnings of the construction of I-94, the Edens Expressway. Moving to 1962, we see that the Edens Expressway is complete. The IMC campus has been expanded, and construction of the National Register publishing headquarters has occurred. And we also see the beginning of the construction of Niles North High School. So by 1974, IMC has actually moved its headquarters to Libertyville, and Brunswick Corporation has purchased and expanded the campus to include an additional 5-story office building, and an additional parking field has been added to the south. Moving ahead to 1988, we see the wholesale redevelopment of the southwest quadrant of the Edens Old Orchard Road interchange. National Register has been demolished, and construction of 2 spec office projects have been completed. They're 5215 Old Orchard Road and the single-story Old Orchard office court. So by 2005, 2 hotels replaced National Register. Brunswick relocates, and the office campus basically goes multi-tenant. North Shore Medical occupies the northernmost building, and parking is expanded for the medical office use. And of course, you can see the Optoma project breaking ground. And moving to 2010, we see that Optoma is complete. The International Holocaust Museum has been built, and Rand McNally has now moved its headquarters from downtown Skokie to the vacant 5-story office building that Brunswick used to occupy. Up to 2016, here we are. The rumblings of Rand McNally leaving for downtown are starting to happen. And the office campus begins to be marketed for subdivision and redevelopment, which is basically where we are now. So what's the takeaway from all this? It's that over time, nothing stands still. Land is developed. Those developments are expanded, modified, ultimately demolished, and redeveloped. Buildings and improvements become obsolete and are vacated. It's important to understand that real estate is an asset. It provides utility and generates income for both the owners, the occupants, as well as the municipalities in which they're located. Neither landowners or municipalities can afford to allow these to lie fallow over time, which brings us to the current situation. So, as was explained earlier, the subject property is part of a current subdivision and land sale. The northern property is occupied by North Shore Medical and other health-related uses. The central property is currently vacant with the departure of Rand McNally and the closing of Everest College. And the subject property is under consideration for the proposed Carvana vending machine fulfillment center that's before you today. So this is the current site survey. The site's improved with a parking field that was accessory to the office and education uses to the north. It's a 5-acre site with 354 parking stalls. Very little healthy landscaping remains on the site. limited store management facilities, and the lighting on the property is not in its full functional code-compliant minimum lighting situation. So we'll take a look at the site plan that Carvana is proposing. So it includes a 7,950 square foot single-story building with a 1,600 square foot 15-tier vending machine tower. That's what you see in red on the plan. 262 parking stalls will remain. That's what you can see shaded in gray. 2 staging bays with 24 tandem spaces for vehicle delivery and staging of vehicles, and 2 drop-off bays for the Sell to Carvana program, part of the vertical integration that Brett had described earlier. Those are shown in blue on this site plan. So what you notice is a structure is also pushed as far east as possible to take advantage of the expressway visibility and to be located as far away as possible from the Optoma development to the south. All of the back-of-house activities are located east of the building to shelter them from the view of Optoma. So we'll talk about the landscaping on the site. Landscaping will be expanded and upgraded. 32 new trees will be added and 5 healthy trees on site will be preserved. The landscaped area will be increased with new perimeter, frontage, and interior lot plantings, including a 5,400 square foot bioswale, providing more permeable surface on the site and upgrading its store management capabilities. In addition, a pedestrian and bicycle connection is provided at the north end of the site, providing access to the Skokie Valley Trail to the east of the subject property. So these were the site and landscape plans that were presented to the Optoma residents a few weeks ago. During that meeting, there were basically 2 major concerns we heard: light trespass and noise and vibration from truck deliveries due to Carvana's 9-car haulers coming to the site. We'll get to the light trespass issue a little bit later in the presentation. But with respect to the noise and vibration, the notion was that a fully laden 9-car hauler represented an extraordinary load, and that while about 75 feet away from the Optoma tower, would be causing excess noise and vibration. Well, the fact of the matter is the maximum weight for a Class 8 truck, a semi-tractor trailer, is about 80,000 pounds, or 40 tons. The average 9-car hauler, without the cars on it, weighs about 18,500 pounds, a little over 9 tons. A typical larger car or SUV weighs about 3,500 pounds. 9 of those is about 16 tons. So the 9-car haulers Carvana uses can be expected to be about 25 tons, which is significantly less than the maximum fully loaded 40-ton semi. For reference, a fully loaded concrete truck weighs about 35 tons, and the Carvana hauler weighs about the same as a loaded garbage truck, which we have to assume visits Optoma much closer to dwelling units on a regular basis, and we have to assume without incident with respect to noise and vibration. But nonetheless, in response to the concerns of the Optoma residents, following concessions have been made to mitigate noise and vibration. First, Carvana has agreed to enhance landscaping along the south property line to help mitigate any noise. Next, Carvana agrees to post 5-mile-per-hour truck signs to reduce speed and thus noise. Carvana also agrees to use reinforced paving over the truck route through the site, and to the degree possible, car haulers will shut off the engine while on site. Again, all in an effort to reduce the noise impact. And finally, signage to ensure trucks turn right to exit away from Optoma will be deployed. So now we get to the vending machine tower. So as we heard, the proposal is for a 15-tier vending machine with a 55-car capacity. Sales are projected to be over 2,300 vehicles annually by 2025, with estimated sales over 8,000 vehicles per year when the facility is firing on all cylinders. So what that translates to is in the first 10 years, Carvana is expected to generate about $9 million in revenues for the village of Skokie. So here's the Carvana Tower in elevation. We're looking at the west elevation that would be facing Woods Drive. As indicated earlier, the proposal includes a single-story building with a vending machine tower. The tower rises to about 140 feet and is clad in a metal and glass curtain wall with metal panel accents. The single-story portion is about 14 feet tall, with metal and glass facing Woods Drive and EFIS and metal panel around the back sides. Split block garden walls separate the staging and drop-off bays, and signage is limited to the top of the building and is tasteful and understated. So now we'll move on to the components of the floor plan. First, we have the Welcome Center, which is number 1 here. This is where the customer arrives, is greeted by Carvana personnel, and retrieves their vehicle from the vending machine tower. And then you see the vending machine tower highlighted as number 2. Number 3 is a workroom with office for interviews, server space, and a key locker. Number 4 is general office space for administration functions and customer support. On the south side of the building, areas for final vehicle prep and staging are shown in number 5, where the vehicle receives a quick wash and inspection before being loaded into the vending machine. And then, of course, there's some ancillary mechanical space. So Carvana employs sustainability strategies both in their site planning and design, as well as in their operations. Sustainability efforts in the site planning include expanded site landscaping, the inclusion of a pedestrian bike connection to the Skokie Valley Trail, the inclusion of a bioswale and enhanced storm management capabilities, as well as charging stations for electric vehicles. Sustainability efforts in operations include appointment-only sales, which limits trips to and from the site, the ability to control the color, character, and intensity of the lighting in the tower. The use of blue-green lighting has been shown to cause less disruption among birds during migratory seasons, which can be a concern particularly in this region. Sustainable construction material sourcing is utilized by Carvana during the construction phase, and on-site recycling is part of all Carvana facility operations. So now we're going to start to get into the impacts of the development. So it's important to note, as Donna mentioned earlier, the subject property is located in the OR Office Research District. So the Office Research District is categorized as an industrial district by the Skokie zoning ordinance. And as mentioned, it is the most permissive district in Skokie with respect to bulk. There's no floor area ratio limits, no minimum lot area per dwelling unit requirements. The only governing provisions with respect to bulk and density are a 50-foot perimeter setback, 30% building coverage, and 180-foot building height. The OR district is limited to the Old Orchard, Edens Expressway interchange, and is designed for high-intensity expressway-oriented development. So here's a look kind of in 3 dimensions of the Carvana proposal. The fulfillment center is well below what's allowed in the OR district. The floor area is only 7,950 square feet with a 40 by 40 vending machine tower that rises to about 140 feet. There's less than 4% building coverage on the site. Compare that to what the maximum that can be achieved on the site under the OR zoning. This image is an example of just one development scenario on the site. This is laid out with a 225-key hotel with expanded meeting and banquet facilities, a 200-unit condo building, and a 900-car parking garage. That comes to about 17 floors at 180 feet, a little over 600,000 square feet of building, and 30% lot coverage. So given that comparison, it's pretty clear that the Carvana proposal is indeed modest in terms of intensity on the site. So let's go through some of the typical impacts of the Carvana development. First, we look at the impact on municipal services, basically public utilities, sewer and water, police, fire, EMS, and schools. With respect to sewer and water, there's very little impact due to the fact that this is a modestly sized facility, and its function is limited in terms of the number of people occupying the site. Nothing about the use points to an increase in police, fire, or EMT services, and as Carvana is a commercial enterprise, there's no impact on schools. So with respect to municipal services, there's really no undue impact due to the Carvana proposal. Moving on to some of the environmental impacts, noise generation on the site will be similar to the prior parking lot use, which is basically cars moving about on the site during normal business hours. There's no intercom noise, which you typically would find in a conventional dealership. The vending machine operation is virtually silent from the outside of the building, and there's considerable existing ambient noise due to the proximity to the Edens Expressway. As detailed earlier, truck deliveries are managed, and not all are anticipated to be the 9 core haulers. As described earlier, they do not represent an extraordinary load. All of these truck trips will originate from Old Orchard Road to the north and do not pass the Optoma development. All offloading occurs remote and screened from the residential use to the south, so again, no undue impact from noise or vibration. So now talk about one of the other potential impacts, particularly in the industrial district, which is danger of fire, explosion, or contamination. With the proposed Carvana use, there's no risk other than the similar risk there would have been for a parking lot on the site. There's no auto service or fueling component, no storage of flammable or hazardous materials, or underground storage tanks for fueling. Again, there's no undue negative impacts with respect to fire, explosion, or hazardous materials. So next we're going to talk about traffic, and for that portion I'm going to turn the presentation over to Bill Grieve of Kimley Horn. Bill?
Hi, I'm Bill Grieve, Senior Engineer with Kimley Horn Associates. I've got 40-plus years of experience in traffic engineering and transportation planning. Happy to say that I've been able to work in and for the village of Skokie for at least 20 years and probably have done well over 50 projects. I was the traffic engineer for the Holocaust Museum, and as mentioned before, a lot of the same types of concerns were raised, whether it be traffic or whether it be property values. But I'd like to think that over the years since the Holocaust Museum has been open, that the traffic concerns really haven't materialized. Okay. Carvana versus a typical car dealership, it's been mentioned the fact that there's no sales on site, no drop-ins or test drives, pickup drop-off by appointment only, and no service department. So as you see on the right side, literally the projected number of Carvana trips at 128 trips a day pales in comparison to a typical auto dealership, which would be projected to have 540 trips. And finally, we want to take a look at other permitted uses. It was mentioned that there was a max development scheme that's on the far right. Carvana, again, on the far left is way lower than everything else. We don't have, it's all by appointment only, and each appointment takes about 20 to 30 minutes. So you really don't have that rush of people coming in and trying to look at cars and find cars and driving cars all around the neighborhood. Lastly, what I'd like to say is that Woods Drive has about 4,400 cars per day on it right now. If we add all the trips from Carvana, that's really only about a 3% increase. And in addition, if we take a look at the difference between Carvana and Optoma, Carvana is literally only about, and if I'm doing my math right, about 5% of the daily trips that Optoma has. So concluding, we really believe that the traffic generated by Carvana can absolutely be accommodated. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Bill. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at how the proposed vending machine tower looks from the vantage points of several units in Optoma. And we'll look at the current condition, how it would look after Carvana construction, and how it would look under a potential maximum development scenario. So before we get into the actual views, it's important to take note of the quality of each of the view corridors from the Optoma Tower. Here, the best views are to the west over the forest preserve, to the east to the lake, and to the south to the city skyline. The least desirable views to the north, where the Carvana Tower will be located. So we modeled the north-facing units and rendered views towards the proposed Carvana vending machine from 9 different units. We selected the closest easternmost units to the vending machine tower, the 6th, 12th, and 18th floors, with views from the same floors from the 3rd and 5th units from the VM tower. We're only going to go through 3 of the units. We've submitted the full raft of the view simulations in printed form, and we've also presented this to Optoma already. So in the interests of moving this along, I'm only going to show you 3 of them just to give you a flavor of what it looks like. Basically, once you get west of that 5th unit from the vending machine tower, the tower is really not part of the view corridor. Of the 650 units, only about 65, or 10% of the total number of units in Optoma, will be able to see the vending machine tower. So we'll walk through some of these images. So the first unit we're going to look at is the 5th unit. We're going to look at all these from the 12th floor. So here's the existing view. You'll note that the angle of the view we took is towards the Carvana vending machine, as opposed to straight out from the unit. That's to sort of give the the best chance of being able to see the unit and giving the most conservative evaluation of view impact. So here's the rendering with the Carvana tower. You can see it's at the far east edge of the vista, and there's really no undue impact due to that, the tower in this particular unit and in this view corridor. Contrast that with a maximum development scenario, and it's certainly a different scenario with a significant impact. Now we'll move closer to the Carvana vending machine tower, 3rd unit from the vending machine. The view with, as it currently exists, with the Carvana tower, again, towards the edge of the vista. It's really a foreground object. It isn't something that obstructs a significant amount of the view corridor from the units, and really no undue negative impact from the tower. Compare and contrast with a different development scenario, and we see this occupies just about all of the view corridor with significant impact. Finally, we'll move to the closest unit to the vending machine. So it should be noted that this unit is kind of wraps around the edge of the building. Its living spaces are oriented to the south to take advantage of the south view. So this would be views from bedrooms at the corner of the building, or at the corner of the unit. Again, the existing view. Here, the Carvana tower and its impact. Again, it becomes a foreground object. And the compare and contrast with another development scenario, there's really no comparison. So when we look at this, overall, there's really no undue negative impact on views. The tower itself is set about 50 feet east of the Optoma tower and about 140 feet north, sorry. And the closest unit to the edge of the Carvana tower is about 190 feet away. So, as we mentioned earlier, light and glare is one of the major concerns voiced by the residents of Optoma. With respect to light and glare, Skokie has basically 2 competing standards. One is for parking lot lighting. This is focused on establishing the minimum amount of lighting in parking lots for public safety. And the second plan, or the second standard regulates light trespass. This ordinance limits how much light is allowed to spill onto adjacent properties. As mentioned earlier, Carvana has the ability to control the color, character, and intensity of the vending machine tower lighting. And to get an idea of the potential impact, we went out to the existing Carvana vending machine in Oakbrook and measured the impact of the internal tower lighting at night. Found it to be relatively insignificant, generating less than 1/10 of a foot candle over the ambient lighting at a distance similar to that between the proposed Carvana Skokie vending machine and the nearest Optoma unit. So, light trespass has become such an important issue that, again, in response to neighbor concerns, Carvana has engaged a lighting expert to study the subject in greater detail. And with that, I'll turn it over to Emily Klingensmith of Schuler Shook to talk more about the photometrics. Emily?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commission. Appreciate you having me join you tonight. My name is Emily Klingensmith. I am a partner and lighting expert or lighting designer with Schuler Shook. I'll go forward here. We're a design firm with offices across the U.S. and in Australia. Our firm was founded about 35 years ago, and we are a group of designers with a diverse set of backgrounds, ranging from architectural engineering, which is what my training is in, to theatrical lighting, to architecture. And we do not only design lighting systems for buildings, both interior and exterior spaces, but we also are engaged from time to time in projects such as this, where we're hired to act as a third-party consultant to review a lighting system that another design firm that has put together to see how it performs. So all that to say that we're very accustomed to developing very detailed, accurate simulations of how a proposed lighting system will perform, and we can estimate that, which is what we've done for this project. So our scope was to look at the proposed parking lot lighting, the proposed tower lighting, and to look at the site to the south of the proposed Carvana site to see what that does in terms of light trespass, as George mentioned a moment ago, and to basically confirm if what's being proposed will comply with applicable Skokie codes related to lighting. And I mentioned this, but we did not design the lighting, we're just the third-party reviewer. So this, I'll walk you through a little bit of what we'll be sharing as it relates to lighting, a few terminology things just so that you don't get lost in the weeds, because this is going to get a little bit technical. We'll speak to the code requirements in Skokie that relate to lighting, and we'll show you the results for how the proposed system compares to what's allowable by code. And then I'll talk a bit about our calculation model and the assumptions and inputs that we put into that model to make it very accurate. To start with terminology, you might hear the term luminaire or see that on some of our slides. That essentially means a light fixture. When we talk about light trespass, that's a condition where light is generated in one place and it spills into another place where it may not be wanted. So we'll talk about that as it relates to light that goes a bit onto the Optoma site. And then illuminance, which is a measurement of light that's incident on a surface. And that's typically measured in a unit called foot candles. So if you see on the following slides, FC, that's a measurement of foot candles or illuminance values. So here's a map on the right that shows the site, which I'm sure you're very familiar with now. And we highlighted in yellow the parking lot part of the site. And we'll talk a little bit about lighting related to the parking lot and how that compares to code. The top dashed line, or the north dashed line, which I see has shifted a little bit somehow in this version of the PowerPoint. So it's not quite there, but that represents 20 feet past the property line, which is a Skokie code requirement. There are certain light level requirements there, which we'll talk about. And then we also, the bottom red dashed line represents the north facade of the Optoma tower, and we looked at light levels, estimated light levels on that facade, so we can tell you how that would impact the residences. And lastly, we looked at the code as it relates to signage, the signage that's being proposed for the top of the tower. So starting with our calculation model, this is really the important part of what we did to make sure that our estimations are very accurate. We are very specific about getting the precise geometry of the tower from the architects that are designing the tower. We got all of the very specific, what we call photometric information, which is basically how the various light fixtures will perform. What's the output, the distribution, the size, the color temperature, all of these attributes that go into how light fixtures perform. And there are files, there's data that represents that we can input into our model. So we got all of that specific data. We also confirmed with the architecture team the reflectances of all of the surfaces of the tower, the reflectances in the material of the new parking lot surface, what's called visible light transmission values of the glass for the tower and for the signage that will go on top of the tower, so that we can very accurately estimate how much light might be emitted through the tower and outside of the tower itself. And we simulated what we call worst case scenario, meaning estimating the brightest potential lighting condition that we could expect to see at these different measurement points. So we put into the model all of the light fixtures being at full output. I'll mention that they all are dimmable, they're inherently dimmable, but to estimate worst case scenario, we had everything on at full, and we measured what's called initial light levels, where we did not account for any degradation due to dirt accumulation, which everyone knows light fixtures will get dirty, building surfaces will get dirty, and that does have a very real impact on how much light is emitted from a fixture or from a building over time. But again, to be conservative, we did not use those factors in our calculations. So starting with the parking lot, this table represents what Skokie code requires, and then the far right column shows the results of what we estimated for what's being proposed. So if we start with the first row, Skokie code requires a minimum horizontal illuminance. That's again a measurement of how much light is incident on the pavement of the parking lot. A range between 0.25 and 0.75 foot candles. The proposed lighting system will have a minimum horizontal illuminance of 0.5, so right in the middle of the acceptable range. For the average illuminance, it's 1 to 3 is what's required. We're estimating that the lighting system would be 2.4, so again in the range. The uniformity, which is a measurement of how consistent the lighting is across the surface of the parking lot zone. The requirement is a uniformity ratio of 4 to 1. So the average light level relative to the minimum needs to be a ratio of 4 to 1, and we confirmed that that is what would be provided with this system. And then lastly, Skokie code asks for what's called a full cutoff kind of light fixture, which essentially means that all of the light that is emitted by the post top of the pole is directed downward onto the pavement, that there isn't light above the 180-degree plane, to limit basically any kind of light that goes up into the night sky. And you can see on the bottom right images there those are images of the light fixtures that have been specified, and they are a full cutoff type of light fixture. And we have confirmed that in some cases the poles will have an additional accessory, which is called a house side shield, which will basically limit the light trespass for poles that are near the property line. So we've been specific as to which poles would have that additional accessory. Moving to light trespass. So this is another part of the Skokie code that addresses lighting, and this particular part of the code speaks to 20 feet beyond the property line. So 20 feet to the Optoma side of the property line. So there are actually in this case, two different code requirements, and they are both measurements at that 20-foot datum measured 4 foot above the ground, a horizontal measurement and a vertical measurement at that datum. And you can see the Skokie requirement for horizontal is 0.3. We estimate that the maximum that would be provided, and this is from the tower and parking lot lighting combined, not just the parking lot. The maximum would be 0.3, but the average is really 0.14. So it's not right at that level across the board. It's just a handful of calculation points across that datum that are at the maximum. And the vertical, what's allowed by code is 0.7, The maximum that we estimate is that 0.7, but the average is 0.34, so significantly lower than that maximum. I'll mention that for this calculation, and really all of them, this calculation, again, we have the lights estimated to be at full output. And I want to just take a little bit of a deep dive to go into the weeds of the light fixtures here, and if you'll allow me to, what I say, geek out on this a little bit. But the lights within the tower are a kind of light fixture which is called RGBAW. It means it's a kind of light fixture that can produce white light or colored light, and there are different LED chips in the fixture that can be dimmed to different percentages to create a color light or a white light. We assume the very worst case scenario, which is to have the red, green, blue, amber, and white chips all on at the same time, all on at full, to simulate the most amount of light that could ever be emitted from the tower. But the actuality is that the way those kinds of light fixtures get programmed is that it's unusual to have all 5 chips on at the same time at full. Typically, it would be at most 80% of the output that would be on, not 100%. But again, to be very conservative, we estimated all of them. So the numbers in the results column represent that worst case scenario, but it's not what I would consider to be the typical scenario. And then we also looked at light trespass on the Optoma facade, the north facade. And this is not a requirement by Skokie code, but we wanted to evaluate this just to see how much further the light would be reduced when you go this additional 60 or so feet beyond the property line. So we as a point of reference, are showing in the suggestion column 0.7 foot candles again, which was the Skokie code requirement at 20 feet. But here we're finding that with the tower and parking lot lighting on together, again at full, which is unusual, the maximum is 0.4 foot candles and the average is 0.19, so less than half of that. With the tower only, we estimate the maximum is still at about 0.4, but the average is even lower than that. And then the last element that we found in Skokie code related to lighting for this application is the signage. And there is a requirement for what's called the maximum illuminance, or the light that's emitted from the face of the signage at a certain distance away. The code states that basically whichever dimension of the sign, either the height or the length, which is the smaller dimension, you take that dimension and put together a calculation grid, essentially, that distance in front of the sign, to estimate how much light the sign will produce. So in this case, you can see with the bottom graphic that the sign is 3.5 feet tall, and that's the smallest measurement of the height versus length. So we estimated at 3.5 feet in front of the sign, what is that value, that illuminance value, and we estimate it's 40 foot candles maximum, which is far below the 75, which is allowed. And in actuality, the average is more like 22. So it's significantly lower than what's allowed for the maximum. And we have a couple of images just to show you an idea of what our calculation program is showing. So you can see the parking lot. This is a view from the northeast looking to the southwest toward Optoma. So the dark colored background or rectangle in the background is the Optoma tower. A view from the northwest looking toward Optoma. So this would be from Woods Drive, essentially, looking southeast. And a view from the northeast corner within the Optoma tower looking to the northeast. And a view from the west looking toward the highway. We don't have that modeled, obviously, in the background. So in short, we basically found that the proposed lighting for this site does comply with all of the applicable Skokie codes related to lighting. So we feel confident that what's being proposed to you should be a very good solution.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. So you just heard a bunch of terminology that revolves around a measurement that's called the foot candle. Just to give an idea of what a foot candle is, it's the amount of light falling on 1 square foot, 1 foot away from a candle. So to give you sort of a real world idea, we were at dinner before we came here, and I pulled out a light meter at one of our colleagues' laptops. So if you're sitting next to your laptop and you hold a light meter here for a vertical measurement, it'll end up being somewhere around 45 foot candles. So when we're talking about fractions of foot candles, we're really talking about a very, very small amount of light with respect to light trespass. So, summing up the external environmental impacts of the proposed Carvana vending machine center, the bottom line is that it's a relatively low intensity use. It generates significant revenue also. It occupies less than 4% of the site with buildings, and the building and vending machine tower are sited to minimize impacts on adjacent properties. There's minimal traffic impact, virtually no off-site environmental impacts, minimal drain on municipal services or utilities, minimal view impact, and minimal light trespass. So from a physical planning perspective, there's really nothing here attributable to the Carvana development that would have a negative impact on adjacent properties or their values. So next, here to talk about property values is Appraiser Mary Lindberger. Mary?
Good evening. My name is Mary Lindberger, and I'm a commercial real estate appraiser. I've been in this business for about 30 years. My practice is largely focused on litigation issues and public hearings such as we're having here tonight. I live at Evanston. I'm very familiar with this area. I'm certainly familiar with the Carvana site and the surrounding developments. You've heard a lot of detail tonight and things that are very technical. I'm not very technical. My analysis is going to be very common sense, and it's going to be based very much on what you've heard my colleagues talking about tonight. I have concluded that I do not see a negative impact of Carvana on the Optoma development, and the reason why is that, first, it doesn't change the nature of the neighborhood. This is a commercial area. Optoma already has commercial neighbors, and this will simply be a new commercial neighbor, but it will be a much smaller commercial neighbor that could conceivably be developed here. I think George has sort of laid out for you in a lot of detail exactly how large a development could be put on this 5-acre site by right. So this Carvana is de minimis in size. In fact, it's hard for me as a commercial real estate appraiser to imagine anybody putting a lesser structure on a 5-acre site than Carvana is. This is a single-story building. It's got an illuminated tower that measures 40 by 40. It is visible from some of the Optoma units, but anything that is going to be developed here is going to be visible. So I mean, I think that's not a meaningful test in terms of value impact, that you can see something. Some of these units can see this development, but I do not think it's going to be a diminution in value to them. Carvanas don't create issues for their neighbors. They have limited customers on site. I mean, all these points have been addressed earlier in great detail. But these are the kinds of things that, if they were not the case, could be really bothersome to a neighbor. If it was noisy, if there were a lot of customers coming there, if there were a lot of loudspeakers, if there was extensive lighting, all of those things would legitimately be a cause for concern in terms of value. But Carvana has none of those. I think you probably won't have a hard time believing that Carvana would not be detrimental to its commercial neighbors. There's a development in Oak Brook that's been in operation for a couple of years now. It has certainly not posed a problem to its commercial neighbors. The development that will be undertaken to the north of Carvana has no objection to Carvana being there. I'm sure the real concern tonight is whether Carvana is going to be detrimental to the residential properties. And I think there's a feeling that Carvana is not a suitable neighbor for a residential development. But the reality is that out of the 30 Carvanas across the country, 10 of them have residential developments within 500 feet of them. I think one of the things you have to understand in terms of Carvana is that Carvana is the late guy to the party. Carvana locates itself in generally established commercial areas, and their key issue is expressway exposure. In many markets, you simply don't find residential developments in that kind of an environment. They don't exist. That's not Carvana's fault, and Carvana wouldn't be a problem to them if they did exist, but they don't. So I looked at the 10 Carvanas that had residential developments within 500 feet of them. And to my mind, when I looked at the 500-foot scope,
that's pretty large, and obviously Optima is going to be closer to the Carvana site than 500 feet. So I sort of focused in on the instances where Carvana was closer to residential developments, and there were relatively few of them. Again, because of the existing land use patterns in these locations. In Tempe, there is a large apartment complex that is immediately adjacent to Carvana and looks right into Carvana. In Philadelphia, there is a residential development that's rental apartments that was developed coincident with Carvana. They were constructed at the same time. In Cleveland, Memphis, and Houston, there are actually single-family developments within probably 100 feet to basically 200 feet of Carvana. In particular interest to me was the development in Houston. It's a single-family subdivision where the homes back up to Carvana. One of these homes was on the market recently for about $750,000. It sold. Next to it was a home that was on the market for over $900,000. It also sold. I wish I could tell you what the sale prices were, but they are not revealed under Texas law. So transaction prices there are secret. I guess lastly, I would say that there's very little that Carvana can do to Optima, I would say. Optima is massively larger than Carvana. It's much taller. It's much larger, and it generates 20 times more traffic. Something is going to happen on this site. There's no way that this 5-acre site that is a key property is going to sit vacant. It's too desirable a location. It offers too great visibility. I guess the question from my vantage point is what would be the least intrusive kind of neighbor that Optima could have, and I would certainly think that Carvana meets those standards.
Yeah, right.
All right, thank you, Mary. I'm going to move on to just summary here. So basically, as Mary said, redevelopment of this site is going to be a given. And it is hard to imagine something of less intensity being located on this site. In reality, from a land use perspective, it is an ideal buffer for what will likely be a more intensive use north of Carvana. It provides a significant separation from whatever that development is going to be. As we've said pretty much ad nauseum, this is a low-intensity use, less than 4% lot coverage, minimal traffic impact, no off-site environmental impact, minimal impact on municipal services, minimal impact on views and vistas, and minimal light trespass. The site plan is responsive to its context. The building location minimizes impact. Back-of-house functions are remote and screened from the adjacent Optima Tower. Significant site improvements are proposed for the site. Additional landscaping, the shared use path connecting to the Skokie Valley Trail, and enhanced storm management. And as we've intimated, Carvana has been responsive to community concerns, particularly regarding studying the light impact and mitigating noise and vibration. And Carvana does employ significant sustainability efforts, pedestrian-friendly features, bioswale with green storm management practices, enhanced and expanded landscaping, responsible construction material sources, and appointment-only managed traffic to the site. Carvana is a Fortune 500 company, a rapidly growing Fortune 500 company, and significant revenues are anticipated to be generated, about $8.9 million over the first 10 years. In addition to this presentation, I did submit a report to the Plan Commission that addressed all of the standards for site plan review, and the conclusions drawn from that are that this proposal meets all of those standards. And with that, I will turn it back to council for closing remarks.
Thank you, George. Well, essentially, I was going to give some of the same reasons, but George has done such a great job of summarizing them that For the reasons that you've heard, we feel we've met our burden. We've complied with all the standards in detail in the written report, which we've provided and is also on the website. And so with that, we would ask that the Plan Commission recommend both the text amendment and the site plan approval.
Thank you. Commissioners, are there any questions of the petitioners? Yes,
Yes,
Commissioner Shaw.
question for Brett.
Yes, Commissioner, sir.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine,
You
thank you.
mentioned something in your testimony that you recondition the vehicle, you change the oil, change a tire, battery. Are you going to have the auto repair shop at this Carvana, or?
Commissioner Luke, Commissioner, no, we don't. We call that an inspection and repair center, or IRC. Those are located throughout the country. They're usually 100-acre tracts of property where all the vehicles go from when we take them in as either trade or buy from public or wholesale, and then we send them there on our logistics network. That's where they get reconditioned. It's more of an industrial property that we have in our portfolio. And then from there, they're posted on the website. Once they're pinged to a buyer in a market, they hit our trucks and go out to the market, and that's when they would be delivered here. All of that work, paint, body, dent repair, is done off-site.
So you take it to the other location for the,
Yes, sir.
how about the car wash?
So we will prep a car, because obviously in transit, it's gonna be driving across the country. Like a lot of other dealers, will spray that off, and we'll make sure that the interior is clean. That's done inside the building prior to loading and going up. There's a secondary bay as well, in case that volume gets too high, so that they can have the car presentable. They are detailed, waxed, and everything at the inspection centers, but again, because they're transported here from the inspection centers around the country, they can have, dirt and grime on them.
So what is your hour of the location, particular this location?
The hours of operation for here,
Yes.
we're generally 9 to 7. It can vary over the years. We've changed that, but it's usually 9 to about 7 o'clock.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Any other questions? Commissioner Berman?
Yes, sir.
Thank you for the presentation. Quite a few of the emails and comments made by residents revolved around environmental and more nature issues relative to wildlife. And although you make the comment twice in the presentation that there'd be no environmental impact, and you talk about briefly using blue light, but I don't see any comment in here relative to migratory birds and the nature of the glass that you're using.
Would you like Emily to address that?
So if Commissioner Luke, Commissioner, so if it's related to lighting, we will ensure.
I'm not asking about lighting, I'm asking about bird-friendly glass.
No, so the glass that we use on the tower is in fact clear glass, because obviously it's a display tower. So we want to make sure that our vehicles are seen by drivers so we don't use the low E that has a very high reflective value, and you can't see the cars you go by. Because it's only a 40 by 40 and not a very large building, it's 6 1/2 and the other. Either you're building a very large format building that birds could strike, or it's smaller and they strike less. In our portfolio of 30, we have never had a bird strike challenge where we see that occurring often in and around our towers. Again, they're slight in nature, so yes, it's clear glass, and it could happen, like it happens at my house, ironically, in Phoenix. But we've not seen that impact our other towers significantly across the country.
Well, one of the documents that we received was written by the director of the Chicago Bird Collision Monitors, and there's a calculation that was performed relative to the type of glass that you would use, a bird collision threat factor. I don't know if anybody's familiar with it, but the clear glass raises a very high threat, but there are glass that's bird safe that would greatly reduce it, and the visibility would not be harmed significantly.
Okay. I'm going to let George touch on that, and then I can come back to respond as well.
Carvana is sensitive to this issue. I think the study that you're citing and the issue with the glass comes from buildings that are much taller than Carvana is.
Actually, they did a study, and they sent an analysis by an architect that's involved in bird preservation. And no, actually, under 200 feet is the typical range for a bird strike. So that's not correct.
Well, what the point I was going to make is regarding migratory birds, which
That's
is
what
one
I'm
of the
referring
big
to.
issues with bird strikes, the large volume of birds flying. They fly typically at a height of about 200 feet at the lowest altitude when they're migrating. So, you know, Carvana towers are below that, and, you know, the taller buildings are the ones that really cause the greatest amount of impact on migratory birds.
Well, it's interesting you said that's not, I mean, the tower is still gonna be, what, 135 to 140 feet. So it is significantly tall relative to that factor. But the larger buildings that you're referring to, frequently in large cities like Chicago and what have you, during migratory season, will turn the lights off at night during key hours of migration. Then, would you consider doing that?
Yeah, Commissioner, absolutely. I don't know when those times are or what that time of year would be. I'd want to look at that. I don't think we object to that. I do think that we should take into account that, again, it's 40 feet wide next to the Optoma Tower, which is hundreds of feet wide. I don't know what the
Well, no,
strike.
but there's shades on all those. This building is actually ideal for bird strikes because it's not only modestly reflective, but it also is completely translucent.
But there are cars just directly behind the glass obstructing
Probably
that.
not enough.
You know, I'm not differing with you. I agree we can definitely look at turning lights off during migratory season. We don't object to that.
And
We're
do
not
you-
interested in killing
are you-
birds. I think you can appreciate that. I just don't know what the strike potential is in our towers because we don't have data on that. I'm sure it exists, as it does in every building, and we'd be open to any suggestions to consider with you.
Okay, and the same thing, are you open to looking at different glass?
Absolutely. If there is clear glass that has the reflectivity that birds would perform better with, we will definitely consider it. I haven't seen it, but if you know of anything, we can always talk to our construction
Well, we can make
consultants.
this available to you and introduce you to the woman that runs the organization because she presents multiple manufacturers of glass.
Great. We'll do that. Thank you, Commissioner.
Any other questions? Yes, Commissioner.
So the hours of operation, does that include truck deliveries and sending out deliveries of cars? Or is that just for when people can come to the facility?
That's generally the employees may be there on the book end of that. A delivery could come on the book end of that because there's a key box, like a typical dealership. We generally don't have any sort of dark 30 hours of operation. So I think you could see staff coming sooner, staying later, and maybe a handful of deliveries beyond, but probably nothing beyond, 11 or midnight. Because we control logistics routing, we can start to impact that by making sure that trucks don't arrive at 3 in the morning. We can do that simply here as well.
So 11 or midnight, you would say, is the limit for when trucks deliveries would come?
If you'd like that to be a restriction, we will definitely do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other
Commissioner.
questions? Commissioners? None? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, before we present the staff report, why don't we take a 10-minute recess? Okay, so. We'll convene at 9:20.
Right. Oh, me too. I'm on the. There's so much. They want here.
Right, I'm going to show you just what they have this one up on the screen right now. Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, maybe,
What's this going to be?
And everything is set up in here already?
Yeah, so I
I see myself at the bottom.
yes, yeah, so like your folder was there, so since there are lots of files, I didn't open them, I just like have the window there, so you just press the escape button, the bar.
Yeah. I always forget.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Try to get.
And you're tethered because we're, just in case the battery runs out.
Does this slide off? Okay.
Not too bad. And you can also use this.
We get more air conditioning?
Okay.
Yeah, you can get anything.
Thank you.
Well, you don't have to come up. That's fine, don't worry about it.
I just thought I didn't get big clear. I thought this was just a sign-in sheet.
No, don't worry about it. Sure. Now, a lot of those people are not coming up to speak. Okay. Oh, Bob Crusoe, yeah. Okay. To Ian? Okay. That's fine.
Wonderful, thank you. That's definitely. Chairman Luke, can we get more air conditioning? It's hot. My wife said you're gonna faint.
Yeah, I don't know the I don't know the operation.
made the last meeting.
I'm here in the back. What are you gonna go back?
What's the word on the street?
It is.
Walk to Lyle every July weekend?
No.
Wear your tie?
No. I've never been up in one. I've always liked to.
Well, there you can just be tethered, so you don't like go.
Yeah, I know, right, to the ground, right.
Yeah.
Is that sort of
I've only been there once, and Aaron was pretty young at that time, so we just watched
Yeah,
him walk it down.
I think my daughter was thinking about taking the kids down.
Is that her best part?
Last year.
Yeah.
Maybe 2022 is the year you can go.
For a few minutes. Bring your mom here.
Yeah. I called her during the break. She's still trying to fix it.
Oh, no.
Yeah. The thing is, everything works perfectly. You think they're not running, but and it shows.
The units in her apartment, right?
This is the first. Even the guy on Google on the phone is confused.
The Is there an on-off switch for the furnace wheel? I'm serious. Check it.
I don't know if there's a switch.
Yeah, there should
Probably is.
There is. Is it gas or electric?
Gas.
Of course. Well, you don't have to come in tomorrow morning. Oh, very good. How's things down in the building? How are things down in the building department? Oh, I see. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I don't know.
It's interesting that that other property that the same here, they're planning on doing something like that. They're gonna knock that down and something else. I didn't know that. Who said that?
Everybody, please take your seats. And as soon as Carrie gets back here, we'll continue with the meeting. We'll start with the staff report.
Okay.
And
thank
Carrie
you.
Haberstash.
Yes. Okay. Staff requests that the reports for 24P and 25P be entered into the record as written, including some modifications, which I'll explain later, but we do have a one-sheet handout in the back that it looked like most of you picked up. Just 2 items, basically, but
Okay.
asking for those to be entered in the record as written.
Your request is granted, thank you.
And at this point, I also want to point out that there was a petition submitted.
Yes, we have in our hands a petition that will be entered into the record.
And then also public comments, various emails, et
We
cetera.
have roughly just a little over 90 comments from residents and most of the Optoma condominium,
Okay.
and they will all be entered into the record.
Okay. All right, so discussing the zoning chapter amendment, staff reviewed the comprehensive plan, the office and research district zoning district, and we also have an Appendix A use table as considerations for this request. The area that is in where the office research district is identified primarily as service employment, and the Optoma development is considered other residential. As mentioned earlier in the meeting this evening, the Office Research District is in a class of industrial districts in Skokie, like most municipalities, and the different classes of districts include, say, residential, business, mixed use, and industrial, as noted here. And the classes represent a hierarchy of least flexible, which would be the residential, to the most flexible, where the industrial zoning provides the most flexibility. We discussed height requirements. The maximum height requirement for this district is 180 feet. The staff recommends that Chapter 118 of the zoning chapter of the Skokie Village Code be amended with the text as follows. So adding a restricted use to our Appendix A use table for car dealer and marine craft dealer. And then also amending Section 118.75, which is in our zoning chapter as well, that auto dealer and marine craft dealer would be restricted as follows. All inventory shall be located within the building or within a parking space that meets dimensional standards for parking spaces. Auto repair is prohibited, and outdoor intercom or speaker systems are prohibited. So that's the recommendation for 24P. And then moving on to 25P, which is the site plan approval. This is a request for site plan approval for Carvana car dealership. The proposed building, this is one of the two corrections for tonight. The earlier staff report had 135 feet, 8 inches, and it's now corrected to 140 feet in height total. And the applicant is also requesting relief from the sign code to allow signs on each side of the building and the corners. Site information. Currently, the site is a surface parking lot, which is not regularly used since the accompanying buildings are vacant. And village staff has reviewed several potential development plans for other buildings on the former, what we'll call Rand McNally campus, but to date, an application for plan commission review has not been made.
Okay, thank you.
I'll do a few more highlights, yeah. So the comprehensive plan identifies this area, Woods Drive, Old Orchard area, as a service employment, which includes a wide range of office, retail, and industrial uses. And since this subject site is within the Office Research District, which is an industrial district, the proposed car dealership meets the comprehensive plan. The land use, the proposed land use is a car dealership, which involves the retail sale of vehicles to customers. The inventory will be located within the proposed building and the parking lot. It's notable that the proposed use does not include a storage yard, service center, auto repair. Please note that the storage yard, as defined by the village, is probably more of a gravel parking lot where cars are kind of parking each other in. And a parking lot would be something where every parking space has a drive aisle or access. So that, so the storage yard is not proposed as part of this, this proposal. Required setbacks are 50 feet on each side, and the building setback is nearly 100 feet from each property line. And please note that the covered parking canopies are located on each side of the building, and they are considered accessory structures, which could be within 3 feet of the property line, and they are not. The proposed land coverage is less than 4%, as noted earlier, and the maximum allowable land coverage by buildings is 30%. For building design, the Appearance Commission will review the building design and propose sign relief at one of its regularly scheduled meetings after the Plan Commission's review and prior to the Village Board review. Let's see what else. It was very thorough, so I'm trying to see what I need to share here. So the applicant is requesting relief from the sign code to allow signs at the roof line on each of the 4 main sides of the building, and then 4 smaller logo signs in the inside at the corners. And the interior lighting is proposed to remain on overnight. This is in addition to the proposed building signs, which typically remain overnight. Since special approval is requested for both the chapter amendment and sign relief, Staff is recommending that a condition require the interior building lighting and building signs facing south and west be dimmed overnight, except for the first floor lighting that as needed, and building interior lighting and building signs facing north and east. Traffic generation, according to the traffic generation report, 3 to 4 vehicle carriers are expected to visit the site each day. Stormwater management will comply with the village and Metropolitan Water Reclamation District or MWRD requirements. And included as part of stormwater management is the bioretention area mentioned earlier. Water conservation will adhere to the Illinois Plumbing Code, and the electrical conservation will be part of the Energy Conservation Code. And also it noted previously, no intercom or speakers on the exterior. There will be more trees than existing on the property, so 5 trees will be preserved and an additional 21 trees to replace the removed trees in adherence with the village code requirements. And local economic impact and building demolition considerations are also included. Staff recommends that the petitioner's request for site plan approval be approved based upon the proposed findings of fact and subject to the recommended site plan approval conditions below. Staff further recommends relief from 82-28B1A to allow the 8 wall signs as shown on the building elevations. This will also be subject to the Appearance Commission. So if they feel from an aesthetic standpoint that the 8 signs are appropriate, that would apply. If they feel that it's fewer, it would be up to 8 wall signs. But it would still be the same sign code relief. I'm going to go through the special conditions for this specific case, and so that's items 1 through 7, and then items 8 through 30 are standard conditions. So as mentioned before, a relief from the sign code to allow 8 wall signs. Interior building lights and building signs facing the south and west shall be dimmed at 11 p.m. each night, except for first floor lighting as needed, and the interior building lights and building signs facing north and east. An outdoor intercom or speaker system is prohibited. Item 4, customer visits shall be primarily prearranged through appointments, with exceptions for customers dropping off or returning vehicles. Item 5, the hours of operation shall be restricted from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Saturday. And then the second modification that was recently changed on the website is condition number 6. Prior to the release of building permits, the petitioner shall provide a bond in the amount of $200,000 to cover the cost of demolition and removal of materials for a period of 10 years. Should demolition or removal be necessary if Carvana files for bankruptcy under Chapter 7 or 11 of the Bankruptcy Code and abandons the building for 2 years, the building shall not be considered abandoned so long as real estate taxes and utilities are being paid, insurance is being carried, and periodic inspections are being performed. And then item 7, or condition 7, the petitioner agrees to participate in condition number 3 of Village Ordinance 15-3-Z-4128, which requires the following: dedication of right-of-way for a northbound right turn lane on Woods Drive at Old Orchard Road, and construction of this right turn lane and adjacent required sidewalks, as approved by the village, should there be any increase in building area or intensity of use, which results in increased traffic generation beyond the current design capacity. Any such increase shall be determined by the village pursuant to an appropriate traffic study. And then, as mentioned before, items 8 through 30 are standard conditions.
Okay. Thank you, Carrie. Any questions? Commissioner Berman?
Carrie, I'm sorry, I always bring this up, but I think it is one of the standard provisions for anything automotive is for waste containers to be in
That should be on, that should be a standard regardless of if it's an auto dealership. I'm just skimming real quick to make sure it made it. Or we can just make sure that the typical conditions are added. So the, every 4 hours and garbage as needed. Garbage removal as needed.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if now's the time to talk about, but adding something that the petitioners agree to meet with the village staff to look at glass and whatever mitigating factors they can on bird strikes, be a condition, at least on meeting with them.
That could be arranged before it goes to the board. Yeah, we can do that. I wouldn't.
I'd like it at least to be in the report that is
Okay.
that's approved. Thank you.
Any other questions of the staff? Very good. All right, thank you, Carrie.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, I will open up the floor to public comments and questions. But I have a request from Asher Bronfeld and Gerald Maystar. They wish to present a presentation to us. And gentlemen, if you would come up. Gentlemen, would you please come up and state your name and state the purpose of your representation?
Sure. My name is Asher Bronfeld. I do live at 9725 Woods Drive, the Maple Building. I'm the board president. I'm here to represent myself and the other board members, which total 10 altogether. We felt it was useful to consolidate, for efficiency purposes, our statements. So I've been given permission in speaking to staff to have a rather lengthier presentation as such.
Okay. And Mr. Maystar?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, my name is Gerald Meister. I'm an attorney. My law firm has offices at 10 South LaSalle Street in Chicago. I have two comments to make about real estate tax revenue and sales tax revenue. And I have represented Oak, Elm, and Maple Towers for approximately 10 years in real estate tax matters.
Okay, very good, gentlemen. Thank you. Well, would you please start your presentation?
Sure, thank you. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
One of the things I was asked to do is we've been hearing the word industrial quite a bit tonight. And although we are in an industrial zone, I think it might give a little bit of perspective to see what we feel about our residents within that industrial zone. So I just wanted to show you a couple of pictures from my front yard and backyard, which might look a little different than. That's what I look out at in the morning during a fall day. And then sometimes when we have visitors in the back. That's what we're looking at. Just some perspective on how we feel about our existence within the industrial zone. Now, it may surprise you to know that when we came to buy units at Optoma, I'm an owner, we came to buy units, very rarely did the salesperson mention, this is the greatest condominium you're ever going to find in an industrial zone. They didn't mention the word industrial. It never came up during the conversation. I'm not saying we're not in an industrial zone, but I hope you appreciate our perspective as residents in a complex hosting 646 units with up to 2,000 people living, depending on move-ins and move-outs, representing 3% of the Skokie population. Frankly, we've been listening to the conversations tonight, And we've been hearing sort of a dismissive tone as it relates to our residents and our existence within that industrial zone and how important we are within it. We've been there since 2006. It is now over 15 years, and we're concerned that we are being treated as interlopers within the same zone that we are residents in. So let's talk about the history. I won't go back as far as Mr. Stissel, George. In terms of this development and how we were informed of it. Where'd the other one go? Sorry. This was the sign that was what's happening here? Let's try it again. This was the sign that was on in the parking lot, probably for the last year. It's I don't know why it's coming up as a
I think,
slide.
yeah, press pause.
Is it a video or still?
Yeah, it's a video, it's media.
All right, this is the sign that was up for like the past year. We knew that a development was coming. That was not a surprise to us. We were all conscious of it. And what we were expecting was something that was already in the expected uses for the industrial zone. If you'll notice the two items that were mentioned, in the sign itself, it's hard to read here. Well, the high density part I get.
Senior housing. And
Hold on.
Senior has housing multifamily.
No, I'm trying to expand the screen. Let's try it again. No. All right, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. So in approximately October 4th or October 5th, notice was sent out. With our great post office system, most of us received those notices on October 8th or 9th. We then spent probably the next week trying to find legal representation. By the time we got legal representation, we got an excellent lawyer. We were within 5 to 6 days of the planned meeting on October 21st. Carvana had not reached out to us. They had not approached us. I filed a FOIA request to see if there had been any indication that they were interested in speaking to us. But as a result of a quirk, and our lawyer got involved, and he spoke to corporate counsel here. He spoke to Foley and Lardner with 2 days to go before the meeting and asked for a postponement of that meeting. A compromise was reached, and Carvana decided to fly in anyway with their representatives and make the presentation that they were going to make that night to us in our party room within our complex. That was the only reason we actually spoke to Carvana prior to this meeting today. We spoke to them on the 21st. I made a presentation at the time. Residents within our community brought up some of their concerns at that point in time, which led to some of the responsiveness that Carvana is referring to tonight, to some of the things that we brought up. Not to all. They didn't respond to some of the things that we brought up, but they did. And what I'd like to do is focus on their response, which took place. Originally, the response was supposed to come back on November 2nd. And then there was a postponement of the November 4th meeting because of quorum issues, if you recall, which led us to the meeting tonight. This is a memorandum from Brett Hanlon, who's here tonight, to me, again, as a it's not just me, I'm not king of Optoma, but it's a response to me representing the board, the various board members. And within that response, he brings up the first concern that was expressed. I made a presentation that night about what our concerns were about traffic. And one of the things that we've noticed here, especially in the presentations tonight, is that there's been a large emphasis on car traffic. That Optoma itself produces many, many, many more trips than Carvana ever would. We agree to that. We, as they say in the legal terms, we stipulate that. That is not the issue. Yet they keep on bringing it up to camouflage, we believe, the real issue of our residents, which is the heavier truck traffic, the 2 to 9 multi-car carriers that bring cars in and take cars out. And let's talk about those just briefly. I cannot. I'm trying to get it down.
Just taking live pictures. Shouldn't have taken live pictures, just regular.
Thank you.
Drag. You're trying to
I'm
grab
trying to
this window
drag
down?
the thing down.
Here, let's look at it here.
That good? No, that's the same problem. Oh, that's it.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Let me know if you need any more help.
I appreciate it. All right. It's a 9-car carrier. George referred to it earlier. And if you looked at the trip report that was originally done in July, they spent, I would say, 80 to 90% of the report talking about car traffic. They did elaborate formulas, computations about car traffic, and barely mentioned the truck traffic that's coming to our lot. 9-car carrier, as George had mentioned before, this one specifically is about 18,000 pounds. Our calculations about weight are slightly different than his. According to the Environmental Agency, U.S. Environmental Agency in 2018, the average car is about 4,094 pounds, ranging from compacts, 2,919 pounds, to large SUVs at 5,603. So let's just round down to 4,000 pounds. We're talking about 27 tons of truck and weight going by our facility. And they're not just going by our facility from a distance. Let's go back to the response letter. The path that they're coming in on, again, from Old Orchard Road all the way down, which, by the way, we had insisted during that October 21st meeting that even though that was their current intent to come down from Old Orchard Road, that they should never make an alternate route of either exiting or entering from Gulf Road. They agreed to that because it benefited both of us. There's a deep bend in the road as you get south on Woods Drive as you approach Gulf Road, which would have been difficult to navigate for those 44-foot trucks in those 9-car carriers. So they agreed to that. So now they're coming down from Old Orchard Road, turning in with these car carriers, and again, they said estimated 4 a day. The report never specified the capacity of the trucks. We're assuming the worst. It could be up to 4 of the larger carriers coming down through here, passing by within 90 to 100 feet of the extreme end of our building. They continue on around, unload, do their unloading or loading in this approximate area, and then they go back out this way and then make a right turn back up to Old Orchard Road. During that meeting on October 21st, we brought to their attention that this was going to be difficult for us. We felt there would be noise level, vibration as it related to these trucks coming in. They had plenty of space within their design to set up a different routing of the trucks. One thing that we suggested at the time was entering in this lane and either getting a roundabout kind of situation back here, or at worst, coming this way and then going around this way out, and not ever running out through the breadth of the Maple building, which I happen to live in. Having their responses were that they would have an additional buffer for visual and noise impacts by increasing the landscape buffer. Well, as you know, landscaping, if you can see through it, doesn't provide a sound buffer. So that doesn't really do much for us. They also said there were going to be speed signs posted along the internal truck route limited to 5 miles an hour. Well, we're familiar with 5 mile an hour speed limits. We have them in our own garage. And if I had $1 for every time I saw one of those exceeded, I could buy a Carvana car. So that doesn't really do it for us. And also, this also is somewhat of a myth, and I can ask for support from the traffic engineer on this. The sound of a truck engine is more about the speed of the engine than the speed of the trip. So when you're revving up an engine of a truck, it doesn't matter whether it's going at a low speed. If it's in the higher part of the gear that it's in, it produces a higher sound. For those of you who have ever driven clutch cars, you know that sound and you know that feeling. So 5 miles an hour, 10 miles an hour really depends on the quality of the truck driver in terms of controlling the engine sound. Then they said that truck engines will be off during loading and unloading of vehicles, which will occur in the gated area in the back of the building. The unloading and loading of vehicles would occur 3 to 6 times per day. Notice that the number of trips has gone up at the upper range on this response. In the original traffic report, it was a maximum of 4, and now it's 3 to 6. And keep in mind, this is the first year of operation. They're not making a forecast as to what the truck traffic will be in year 10. There's no element in their report, in their traffic report, that gives any kind of escalation of the number of truck trips as it relates and correlates with volume. As you know, the economic justification for this Carvana project is a massive increase in sales, starting out at $19 million of sales in the first year, which justifies their 1% sales tax revenue generation for Skokie, going all the way up to $176 million in year 10. Some of that's inflation. We've accounted for that. We're actually very generous. We kind of use this year's inflation numbers, which are higher than average for the last 20 years. We determined that in year 10, they would be doing 5 times as many units as they are doing in year 1. So instead of 3 to 6 trucks going by during operating hours, it might be 15 to 30 trucks. Now, what's the big deal about trucks? As Mr. Sissel said, you got garbage trucks there every day. You know what? We do have garbage trucks every day. We don't like the garbage trucks, but they take away our garbage. These trucks don't do anything for us. But let's talk about sound, and let's talk about what happens with a truck. Let's talk about noise level. As you know, with noise level, they're measured in decibels, on a logarithmic scale. So when you're going from, let's say, 60 decibels to 70 decibels, you're really going up twice the amount of volume. When you go to 60 to 80, it's 4 times the volume of sound. So using 70 as sort of a standard of reference loudness, living room stereo 15 feet away is 70 decibels. Well, let's see what we have here. At 90, we have a diesel truck at 150 feet. It's 4 times as loud as your living room stereo at 15 feet, a vacuum cleaner at 10 feet. We could be seeing that within a 8 to 10 year period, 15 to 30 times a day. It's not necessarily the size or the load of the truck. It's the truck engine sound. It's the speed of the engine that causes the noise level. If these were garbage trucks, maybe we'd be a little bit more accommodating to them as long as they took away our garbage. All they do right now is help in Carvana's operation. They don't help us at all. And when we're sitting in our apartments, we're not so much worried about the ambient light that's coming in from the tower. We're concerned about the noise level of their vehicle traffic. We asked them to change their route. They didn't do it. Also, we asked during that meeting we have a situation, as you know, and everyone has this situation, where there's a lot more truck traffic in general, carrying packages. We have maintenance people. And de facto, we've been using that lot illegally. No one's cared at the moment. But many of our operating trucks that come in to service the unit owners have just run out of parking space. We have a package room, that's automated. And there are times where we could use courtesy parking. Now, there's many spaces, as you know, in this development that's proposed. It's in the hundreds, and yet they could not justify to us during the meeting exactly what all of those spaces were required for, especially in the early years of the operation. We went to them and we asked them, could we have some courtesy parking spaces that would help us out on a 1 hour, 2 hour kind of basis. They decided that wasn't, they couldn't accommodate us on that. So customer parking is out. Let's talk about business operations. We were concerned about the hours as posted on the conditions that the staff had. If you'll notice the conditions, it was 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., which is 15 hours. Most Carvanas are open anywhere from 10 to 12 hours in a day, even some less. We were trying to figure out what are these employees doing in all the downtime hours. One of the things you heard today was a possibility of trucks coming at those hours after the customers are not allowed to anymore. Well, this is coming at an inappropriate time for us. As bad as the truck traffic and sound would be in the middle of the day, if they were coming in at 8 or 9 o'clock at night, it would even be worse. Some people are early to bed, early to rise. They're going to sleep at 9 to 10 o'clock. And besides dealing with the light, they're now dealing with truck traffic. We would like, hopefully, some more specificity as to when their trucks will be coming and going, so that we can at least be prepared for it and ready for it. Again, we have not gotten a response on that. So here, for example, the response is, in the staff report, it's 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Typically, our vending machine operates from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. for customer pickups. Employee operations and trips would continue beside those hours, but not beyond the hours listed in the condition of approval. Again, this seems like a very wide range. We'd like it narrowed and specified as to what exactly is happening during those hours, if they're really necessary, or it's just an opportunity to keep the lights on full blast. We talked about security. I think they adequately dealt with that. Now we're going to be talking about property values, and I want to switch reports to the one that was just produced by may I call you Mary? Okay. She gave an overview of her report, but I want to go into a little bit of detail. if that's all right. Let me find you, Mary. Here you are. This was a full, it was actually, we got a hold of this yesterday, so I had a little bit of time to prepare for this. And this is the more broader descriptive version of what she presented tonight. And I found one thing a little bit interesting. She went through, you know, the impact of Carvana on the neighborhood, both in terms of the industrial users, both in terms of the residences. And we talked about neighborhoods. And then she's described Skokie Carvana, which the proposed facility, and then she talks about us. We are known as the multifamily development. Also located here is a multifamily development of 3 buildings that were constructed beginning in about 2006. Does not appear, this is the sentence I'm kind of interested in, does not appear that either its commercial neighbors or its direct exposure on an expressway has had any detrimental impact on this property. Again, this has been communicated in various ways throughout tonight's presentation. Well, we kind of beg to differ on that point. We have had, since the developer sold his units, ranging from 2006 to 2011 as the 3 buildings opened up, I can categorically state that not one unit has sold above the original developer sale price. And let me just show you a comparison to what's been going on in the rest of the Chicagoland area. There's a Chicago price index that's kept by the Federal Reserve Board of St. Louis, showing the average prices in the Chicago area between 2000 is the 100 point, but it actually goes back further than that. And as you'll notice, in the real estate bubble of 2006 and 2007, which unfortunately is when Optoma started selling units, we hit a peak in the 160 area, had a drastic drop in condominium prices to back to the 100 level. And then it's been climbing slowly and steadily back in total to about 160. So we're virtually even now. So you would expect that the average condominium is at least at a break even in terms, assuming you had bought at the absolute peak. Obviously, if you'd bought any other place, you'd probably show some kind of profit. Well, my categorical statement, I'll just give you 3 examples. I could give you 30, I could give you 100, but the hour is late. So I'm going to give you 3 specific units and what's happened in terms of price to those units with regards, again, to Mary's statement about having no detrimental impact of being in an industrial district. 9655 Woods, southernmost building, known as the Oak Building. Unit 614, 1 bedroom, 1 bath. On 5/15/06, that unit was purchased from the developer for $218,000. 11/8/11, that owner bailed out, sold it for $90,000. On 11/1/21, that lucky buyer was able to sell it for $189,000, which is still $30,000 less than the original developer sale price. 9655, another unit, maybe that was just 1 bedroom, 1 bath, small unit, maybe not a lot of demand. 9655, unit 802, 2 bedroom, 2 bath, sold for about $316 a square foot, $470,500, 5/17/06. 3/19/21, 15 years later, it sold for $289,900 at $195 a square foot. Let me give you one more example, and then I'll sum up this point. Different building, Elm Building, the middle building, 9715 Woods, 3 bedroom, 2 bath. Sold for $562,000 on March of '07. 12 years later, 369,500. The point that I'm trying to make here is we have suffered because we're in an industrial area. While the rest of the condominium market has pretty much gone back to flat from the peak of 2006, 2007, we haven't. Now, I don't know what else to attribute it to. Maybe they cut down a couple of trees in the forest preserve. But the basic fact is, living in an industrial area, as has been stated, has issues for a large residential community. We have suffered, and will suffer more as the industrial is built up. So then it becomes a question of which is the best of the worst possible cases for us. Many of our residents believe that Carvana is the worst possible, not all. I'm representing quite a few people when I stand here in front of you today. Let's talk about those 30 developments that Carvana has around the country. You know, we've heard a lot about the fact that some of them are near residences. Of course, 2/3 are not. The vast majority of the ones that are near residences have been mentioned tonight. Tempe, Arizona, which happens to be the headquarters of Carvana, actually had a very favorable review by their residents prior to their development plan going through. As a matter of fact, they met twice with those residents, minimal as they were, twice before they even went in front of the Planning Commission. The way it was scheduled for us, we were never going to meet with them before they went with the Planning Commission. But they did get a good review. It's a lower income area in Tempe. Most of the residents felt there would be an improvement to their area to have a Carvana. The one major difference is that it's an 88-unit development. It's called La Mirage Apartments, and the trucks don't roll by the full length of the street that separates La Mirage Apartments and Carvana. Houston, which Mary mentioned, had those single-family homes. I don't know if you're aware of this. Well, you would be. You're in Planning Commission. Houston has no zoning laws. It's amazing what kind of configurations you get in Houston. But even those buildings, those single-family residences, they live on Lasso Street, which you refer to. And because I'm having a tough time with the screen right now, I'm not going to bother showing you that. Lasso Street's a narrow one-lane street. None of the truck traffic that we're concerned about goes by in Houston. As a matter of fact, you'll find, even within the 10 residential developments that are referred to in her report, there is very little truck traffic that impacts those residents. Actually, there's very little car traffic because many of the entrances are right off of the highway going directly into the Carvanas. So these 30 are not representative of what Carvana is trying to do here. It's going to be the tallest tower in the country, it's going to be the most proximate to residential, and will impact the most residents in one fell swoop. We're talking 2,000 residents. We are not the same as Oak Brook, which is totally surrounded by other industrial buildings, far away. No one's going to complain. No one's going to be bothered by it. To sum up, other residents will be addressing other specific issues. I focused on the truck traffic and also the enormous incongruity of having Carvana next to a 2,000-person residential community. I'd like to thank staff. You guys really have a great staff. We've been treated with courtesy, professionalism, helping us out. We know that this is a tough decision for you. Hopefully it's a tough decision for you. And we just ask that you keep an open mind, that this is a difficult decision. It's not simply a question of having another industrial use come in. Keep in mind, once you approve this amendment, forget about Carvana for the moment. Once you approve the amendment, that means that the rest of the industrial zone could have another car dealership or a marine dealer. Not that there's a lot of marine dealers around. Many of them are 10 or 15 miles away. But this would open it up. This amendment makes it easier for the next dealership to come in. Carvana is going to have competitors in the future. They're not going to simply sail along, growing in a hyperbolic rate. They will eventually have competitors, and those competitors will be interested in the same highways that Carvana is interested in, and they will come to you and say, you did it for Carvana, you can do it for us. Also keep in mind that the facility as is, being as large for the purpose that Carvana is currently seeking, could also be expanded in the future. They could expand the volume too. They have a lot of room to play with. Again, you're opening it up. Once you pass this amendment, it's hard to go back. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Bronfeld. Please, please, no applause. Okay, at this time, I know, oh, I'm sorry. Mr.
I will be far briefer.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, again, my name is Gerald Meister. I'm an attorney, and I represent unit owners at Oak, Elm, and Maple Towers. I'm not here as an expert in the market value of the condominiums at Optoma, but I have a very strong expertise in how that valuation and a change in valuation affects real estate tax. To estimate property values at Optoma, I've spoken to 3 brokers that have extensive experience buying and selling units at Optoma. One broker works for Coldwell Banker, one for George Realty Group, and one for Jameson Southby. They hear comment in the buying and selling, they hear comments from potential buyers about location, amenities, and anything else that pops into people's minds in buying a unit and what they're looking for and what they're concerned about. When confronted with the potential impact of Carvana on property values, they ranged in estimates of a reduction in value of anywhere between 15 and 30% reduction in value. We arrived at a consensus of a 20% reduction in value. What does that mean? The assessments, the known assessments for 2020 of all 3 towers at Optoma is $13,219,000. It's not exact, it's a close approximation. That's the assessed value of all 3 towers. I have estimated that a reduction in 20% of the based on what the brokers have told me, would reduce the total taxation by approximately $732,000 a year. A 20% reduction in value would result in a $732,000 a year reduction in value. That's on a yearly basis. You can extrapolate that out as many years as you like. My next comment deals with sales tax revenue. My comment in sales tax revenue is that it is affected by the trade-in value of a vehicle. If you go to Carvana and you want to buy one of their vehicles and you want to trade in a vehicle, as of January 1st, 2020, there is no limitation on the trade-in value for that vehicle that you're trading. What that means is the valuation upon which sales tax is computed is reduced by the full value of your trade. That's important because the sales tax projection presented by Mr. George Kissel, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, I'm sorry if I'm not, is $9 million over 10 years. And that comes from page 15 of the Applied Economics report that I believe you ladies and gentlemen have. Mr. Kissel doesn't indicate whether trade-in value is taken into account in that projection of $9 million. That's very important. I think the $9 million projection is high. When you look at that projection, and you look at the $732,000 reduction in real estate tax revenue, you're talking about some very serious money for the village. I have nothing further. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Meister. Okay, at this time, I know a number of you have signed up on the list here. So those people who have signed up and wish to comment, would you please line up along the wall? I am not imposing any time limits here, but I do ask you to be brief and be aware of the previous speaker. If that speaker has, has the same issue as you do, then I would ask you to, sit down if your questions or comments have been well expressed by the previous speaker. So, starting with you, sir. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Yisrael Ebert. I am a resident of Oak Building, 965 Woods, Unit 503. The reason I'm here is because I want to state for the record that I object to the approval of the application of Carvana, the petitioner for 2021-24P and 2021-25P. I also object to the hearing taking place today and also the format of the hearing, and I want to state that for the record. And I want to also submit my request for the record is I want a continuance of this matter to Thursday, January 27, 2022, so that I may have adequate time to prepare to present evidence, call and cross-examine witnesses, and rebut testimony given by the applicant Carvana. Requesting the right to subpoena witnesses, and I have a list which I would give it to you so you have it on the record, which I will read a little bit. And I'm also requesting the ability and adequate time to cross-examine witnesses. Now, I would say I have a little different experience dealing with Skokie staff than Asher had, and unfortunately, mine has not been so positive. I sent out letters to Corporate Counsel Skokie as well as your representative, and I assume that the Corporate Counsel speaks for you. And I was going to submit a response, but I want to be able to submit my response. I want to be able to read it for the record and then submit it to you. So, this is to all of you and to Michael Lorge. I'm in receipt of his letter. I'm disappointed in his response. His letter appears to read like it was written by applicant Carvana's expensive team of lawyers here, rather than by the legal representative of the village I live in and cherish. I recognize I'm simply an individual citizen of Skokie who's gravely concerned about the drastic negative impacts of the proposed Carvana project on my adjacent property, neighbors, and community, whereas the applicant is a massive corporation with special interests. Though as a Skokie Corporation Counsel, I expected more concern about the rights of citizens in Skokie to be a display in his letter. I believe that he offered a beleaguered interpretation of both statutes and case law. First, I want to say that notwithstanding his apparent misinterpretation of relevance of 65 ILCS 5/11, 1113, 7A to this matter, I also rely on the authority of 55 LCS 5/1201.2.1, which clearly states that, quote, the principles of substantive and procedural due process apply at all stages of the decision-making and review of all zoning decisions. This is applicable to any petition or application for special use, variance, rezoning, or other amendment to a zoning ordinance, end quote. Moreover, in the 2009 decision in Pasadena versus City of Zion, the Illinois Supreme Court made it clear that due process rights apply to all types of zoning decisions, including those made by a legislative or governing body. Case law has established that the principles of substantive and procedural due process include the grant of continuances for adequate time to prepare, the right to present evidence, including the right to subpoena witnesses and the right to cross-examine opposing witnesses. Secondly, I think his assertion that, quote, "The matter before the Plan Commission on November 18th is not a hearing regarding special use or zoning variance," and, quote, "is not an administrative hearing," is belied by the fact that case 2021-25P before the Plan Commission, per the legal notice of public hearing for case 2021-25P, as listed on the Skokie website, is a request by Carvana for, quote, "relief from Chapter 82 of the Village Code," end quote, which squarely makes the Planning Commission hearing today a hearing regarding special use or zoning variance. Skokie Village Code explicitly describes a relief from Chapter 82 of the Skokie Village Code as, quote, "variances" and, quote, "administrative action." And Chapter 82, Section 82(9)B states, quote, "effect of all decisions, all variance shall be construed as administrative actions for the purposes of assuring that the inequities in specific situation may be avoided by granting a variance, shall not be construed as amendments to the provisions of this chapter." Now, if you insist on denying my requests that I just mentioned to you, based on your apparent belabored assertion that the Plan Commission is not a Board of Appeals, please take notice that I intend on requesting the same Carvana witnesses, which are in my list, and I'll read to you, be subpoenaed by the Village Board and to cross-examine all witnesses before the Village Board in the case that the Plan Commission approves Carvana request, which I think appears for me to be a foregone conclusion right now. Finally, in the response to the assertion that the Plan Commission's last-minute 2-week postponement due to quorum issues to provide adequate, it provides adequate time for an individual to prepare for a hearing. I will repeat what I stated in my prior emails. Given that I only have weekends to prepare due to life responsibilities, I'm not retired, I have life responsibilities, and I simply cannot adequately be prepared for barring a 90-day continuance. Carvana benefits from months, if not years, of preparation time and enormous resources at its disposal, including a high-priced law firm with 1,100 lawyers. Principles of basic fairness mandates that I be granted the time I request to prepare. So that's why, again, I submit those requests to you. I do want to just read a list, finally, of witnesses that I would asking the board to subpoena, and that is Ernie Garcia, the second major shareholder of Carvana, Ernie Garcia, third President, Chief Executive Officer, and Chairman of Carvana, Mark Jenkins, Chief Financial Officer of Carvana, Daniel Gill, Chief Product Officer of Carvana, and Tom Terrier, President of Special Operations of Carvana. Now, if I have permission, I'd like to present this material so it can be entered in the record.
You can,
Thank you.
yes, give it to us. Yes.
Sure.
Are you a lawyer?
Yes,
No, I'm not a lawyer. I'm an individual citizen that's concerned about my community, about my neighbors. I'm concerned about what is this going to do, and that's why I'm here.
Okay, sir, we do have a, I'm gonna ask our legal, sir, do you wanna? Yes.
Yeah.
Our Corporation Counsel, Kabilski will answer your question.
Sure, I'll just address the board and try and shed a little more light on the situation. We did receive your emails, Mr. Ebert. We did review the statutes you cited, as well as the clearing case. And the Corporation Counsel's Office determined that the statute that you cite does not apply to the proceeding in this case, and you explained why we came to that conclusion. The main reason being that this is not a special use or a zoning variance. It's a zoning text amendment, as well as a
What
site
about
plan
25P?
approval. And in addition, perhaps most importantly, this is not a final hearing body. We are merely a recommending body.
Yeah,
No
but
one's rights are being adjudicated tonight.
Statute says that it applies to all steps in the zoning decision process, including this one. And that by not allowing me to cross-examine witnesses or any due process, it basically what it's doing is that you're giving if you approve it, which I think you will, it's like giving your stamp of approval without allowing anybody else to confront the witnesses. You're accepting the testimony at face value, stamping it, and then presenting it for likely inevitable approval at the village board level. But if you want to deny it here, which I disagree with, I'm going to go, when it goes to the Board of Appeals, I'm going to be doing the same exact thing, just to let you know.
Understood. Your
Yeah.
letters to us are in the record. Your
Yes.
objection is noted here tonight.
And again, I would just, if you look at the law and you look at the case law, it is very clear that it applies to all zoning decisions, including this one. And I think that your, which I understand is your rejection on the record, is a rejection of my rights as a property owner within 250 feet.
Well, I disagree we're infringing on your rights, but I do agree with you that we have different conclusions. That's what the law requires in this case.
Thank you.
Hi,
Yes.
my name is Roberto Levi. I am an orthopedic surgeon and professor of clinical assistant professor of orthopedics at the University of Illinois. I want to mention that I did present to Mayor Van Dusen and also to Mr. Matt Brandmeier a sample of studies regarding how blue light affect the circadian rhythm. For the ones that do not know, the circadian rhythm affect animals, vegetables, and humans. We are animals, but humans first. The papers I presented shows the characteristics of blue light, the infringement on the health of the cells, not only of the eye, if not practically in all the organism, affect diabetes, affect hypertension, heart problems, and also the breastfeeding, in between other things. I only have time since Monday when I came here to present only a few papers because of lack of time, but there are an infinite number of papers talking about this. And also I present papers regarding the problems with distraction of the drivers in the highway due to signs with LED blue light. And the best study, it was done in Sweden, and Sweden did forbid any light sign in the roads throughout the country, because distractions of about 2 seconds are cause of serious accidents and death. There are also studies done by several universities here and throughout the world regarding this problem. And it's seen that the distraction on the road produced in the drivers inadvertently change of lines, loss of control, and this, it may happen in here also. Blue light, it's detrimental for the health of the people.
Okay. Okay, if you
And
said you submitted,
I did submit the papers, and I want those to be put it on the record.
okay,
The mayor has it, and the commissioner has it.
all right. I haven't seen those papers, so I
No,
can't
this
comment.
came this morning. Then
Okay.
probably they didn't have time to,
All right.
even to read it.
Well, there's time between the meeting tonight and the meeting with the Board of Trustees for them to go over and evaluate the papers.
And if it's necessary, I can add more papers.
That'd be fine.
And that it will certify how detrimental is blue light to the health of the humans.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you very much.
Hello there,
Yes,
my
sir.
name is Mark Jaycott. I live at 9655 Woods, which is the Oak Building. I moved here in April of this year. I stayed with my son for 2 months, looking for a place to live. We found the Optoma to be a nice, quiet, secluded area with no commercial property or that kind of stuff around there, and we also looked at the zoning. And the zoning said OR, office research. So Carvana has stated that they are not asking for a zone change, but they are. They're asking for a circumvention of the zone that we currently have. They want to allow a car dealer and marine craft dealer in the OR zone. So this is a change to our current zone. And I just think they're trying to pull one over on us, saying, oh no, we don't want a zone change. We're not asking for a zone change. But they are, they're changing our zone. So with that in mind, I think there's a potential for us losing our quiet community that we all enjoy right now. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening. My name is Annette Prince, and I am the Director of Chicago Bird Collision Monitors, a conservation project that's worked for 20 years in the Chicago area and quite often with the village of Skokie for the protection and rescue of resident and migratory birds. In fact, our group is the recipient of Skokie's 2015 Annual Public Health Partners in Excellence Award for our cooperative efforts with the village to make a positive difference for wildlife. I'm here to voice the concerns that have already been mentioned about the potential hazards of the glass and lighting design that the Carvana Tower is going to present to birds at the proposed location. With its proximity to Harms Flatwoods, as well as being not that far from Skokie Lagoons, the Chicago Botanic Gardens, and Lake Michigan, in addition to some of the landscaping, which is in some ways being put down as a positive thing, but the landscaping is going to bring even more birds in proximity to the tower. We feel that this building, this particular Carvana Tower, is unique in its environmental threat than some of the other Carvana towers that are set up throughout the country. Any structure with a high percentage of either reflective or transparent glass poses a risk for collisions at night if lights are to attract the birds to the building, as well as during the daytime when they're either seeing a reflection off the surface of glass or they're seeing a clear space that's invisible to them and they're going to fly through. And I want to strongly counter the assertion that height is a factor, and that taller buildings kill more birds, and that a tall glass building is more dangerous. Studies have shown that the majority of 1 to 2 story buildings account for the majority of bird death across the country. And so the equation really is birds in the presence of glass, and the Carvana Tower is essentially meeting that equation by being close to these natural areas. We have evidence of this very strongly in a building we monitor in Downers Grove. It's the Etna building that sits directly across the street, about the same distance the Carvana Tower would be to the Harms Flatwoods. It sits across from Lyman Woods in Downers Grove. And that single building, which is about a 15-story structure, has reflective glass that is consistently killing birds. It's a deadly combination of this idea of glass next to a natural area. We see the dangerous results of a 1-story building, the Apple building, that is all clear glass and sits on the Chicago River in downtown Chicago, right next to Lake Michigan and the river. There are daily constant bird deaths occurring at that building, which is not particularly tall and not particularly large, but it has that dangerous threat level. We mentioned before that there are possibilities to reduce the risk if the tower is still going to be built by using a bird-friendly glass in the construction. The LEED standards for the U.S. Green Buildings Council has all sorts of reasons for how a building can be more environmentally safe, and they have a pilot credit 55, which presents a formula that you can plug the specifications of a building in according to the type of glass they're using, the amount of glass, and how the glass is being presented. And the ratings, the safest rating for a building you can achieve when you fill out this equation is 1. That would be a building with no windows. That would be an all-brick compound with no glass. Anything over 20 is considered of high risk to birds. And as was mentioned earlier, we ran the specifications that were listed on the Skokie website for this tower into the LEED pilot credit 55, and using a standard transparent glass for this tower, the threat factor of the building came out at 58. When the calculation was done with a bird-friendly glass, the threat factor was 17. That's a significant improvement if bird-friendly glass is used. So from a traditional glass with a highly elevated threat level of 58 to a threat factor of 17, there will be a significant decrease in the amount of bird injury and death that will occur at this building. We would obviously advise against the construction of the Carvana Tower at this proposed location, but if built, we would ask that the Village of Skokie make it contingent that it meet a threat factor of under 20 and thereby meet a factor that will not pose such a dangerous situation for these birds. There are glass manufacturers, Guardian Glass, Walker Glass, Viracon Glass that make products that can achieve transparency but still present a patterning on the glass that birds will see and avoid. The Bucks Stadium in Milwaukee was just built and met this pilot credit 55 with huge amounts of glass, visibility into their sales areas, into the interior of the building. There's no obstruction to looking inside the building, and yet they met this acceptable threat factor level and achieved pilot credit 55, and thereby are being leaders, as I think the Village of Skokie can be, by making this requirement. And it will be a win for Carvana. I think it'll be a win for Skokie, a win for the birds, and it is something that I believe Carvana customers and the citizens of Skokie would want a structure that does not present significant harm to birds. And I hope that's a strong consideration. If there's any way we can consult and help with understanding the types of glass that are beneficial. There are some glasses out there that, types of glass that propose that they can use ultraviolet, which birds can see and people cannot, and most people advise against ultraviolet because ultraviolet doesn't work at night and ultraviolet doesn't work in some situations, and it doesn't help certain birds. So some people think it's a silver bullet and will use the glass that's got ultraviolet in it. It really does not work 100% of the time. These other glass manufacturers, including the one that was used by the Javits Center in New York, which completely replaced all its glass. It was the biggest bird killer in New York City, the Javits Convention Center. We've all seen the Javits Center because it's been used for a lot of the coronavirus treatment places. They replaced all the glass with Viracon glass, and from being one of the worst buildings for killing birds in New York City, it is almost negligible the number of birds that are created. So we have the ability to do this safely, and again, as I said, be a leader in what Skokie is doing to protect the environment and be stewards and sustainable.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Kevin Kane, and I live in 9715 Woods Drive in the Elm Tower. And you may be happy to know that I just have two questions for you that you should ask of yourselves. Do you have the answers before you make your presentation to the Board of Trustees? Because the Carvana people have said tonight that the interest in the facility is because of the exposure to the expressway. Well, that exposure to the expressway also could potentially bring with it a visual distraction, which the doctor referred to earlier. Now, the question is that the Illinois Department of Transportation, when it comes to an interstate highway, has some jurisdiction, and if a building is within 500 feet of that expressway, then there should be a filing done, which is basically the projection of the lighting coming from the building or the building itself standing there as an individual. So my two questions for you really are, did we have a filing of the projections for this building? And then number two, what was IDOT's comments to that filing? Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Jean Kavanaugh. I live in 9715, the Elm Building. Ladies and gentlemen, the governing boards of Skokie, as evidenced by recent survey questions that most of us, I hope, filled out, are concerned about the nature, the appearance, and the friendliness of our multi-ethnic village. Woods Drive is a small, quiet community of offices, daycare, residences, a forest preserve, and the Holocaust Museum. The Holocaust Museum is the second largest in the country, third in the world. To their credit, unlike some others, they focus not only on remembering the past, but also on the present and the future. They present troubled people of all ethnicities. It is a sacred place, a place for remembrance and prayer and planning for the future. It's Skokie's gem. I think it would be disrespectful not only of our Jewish friends and neighbors, but all of us residents if Skokie let this peace be disturbed by the presence of a car dealership of any sort. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Chairman Luke. My name is Mark Jacob Jr. I'm a co-owner in the Oak Building, 9655. First thing I want to bring up is the word uniqueness. I really challenge anyone to find, that building is so unique to Skokie, the Optoma, compared to, I challenge anyone to find a building as unique in the suburbs of Chicagoland. So to me, I think a heavy dent goes into that uniqueness once you throw a used car dealership in there. Let's not try to pretend this isn't anything that it's not. It's a used car dealership. I've driven Edens up to Milwaukee many times, driven by that building, the Optima, and saying, wow, that's really unique looking. Just a little bit further north, and you start to come to the dealerships, CarMax, I think there's a Lexus dealership, whatever it is, on the west sides of the 94. And I don't recall saying, wow, that's really unique too. I'd love to have that in my city. So I don't know anybody else that feels that they want to have a used car dealership in their area, but I know I don't. Never dreamed of that growing up. Now, they can paint a rosy picture of their dealership all they want, but a simple Yelp review that I just did, or a Yelp check, I should say, and in Oak Brook, they get a 2.5 star rating on Yelp. I mean, do we really want a depressing, nobody likes it dealership in our area? And it's not just for the Optima. I'm talking about Skokie in general. You know, if Skokie isn't that type of suburb to deal with something like that. Just like I would never advise the Bears to come to Skokie. It's just not that kind of suburb. If you want something like this with access along an expressway, 15 miles west of us is the largest industrial park in North America, Oak Grove Village. I recommend checking that out. That village has specific zoning and government that is set up for the type of business that you'd like to build. And I think it'd be perfect for you. I'm not against business, I'm against this type of business. And again, don't be mistaken. You can put lipstick on a pig all you want. At the end of the day, it's still a pig. Okay? Lastly, in regards to, you know, I wasn't going to do this, but I had to after seeing their presentations tonight. I felt like I was at a used car dealership. For them to say that schools aren't impacted, last I checked, there's only 2 major roads that get into Niles North. Gulf or Old Orchard, correct? Unless you live in that little box. So I don't know how the big trucks on Old Orchard aren't affecting students trying to get into Niles North. I also feel for those little kids in the daycare just north of the Optima that are going to be seeing, they say 4 now, big trucks, but I can imagine many more as business picks up, going across the front of their school all the time, their daycare. I know as a father of a 3-year-old daughter who loves going outside, they've got a playground out there. What does that do? I also think that that specific area, that little stretch of whatever you want to call that box there, from the woods to the Optimum, all the way to the 94 right there, I challenge someone to find me a more nature kept up section of Skokie. I just don't think it's out there.
Thank you.
So again, I
Very good.
just ask the board to reconsider this, just based off, at the end of the day, we're talking about a used car dealership.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Jerry Brozak. I'm a resident of 9725 Woods Drive. That's the Maple Building. I'm kind of confused. I hear the attorney for Carvana and then Mr. Kessel talk about, oh, this is an industrial area, industrial. I kind of, maybe I'm looking at the wrong section of the zoning code, but I'm looking at section 118-175 OR Office Research District, and I'm trying to find something that says industry. I'm reading it, and it says the OR Research District is established to allow development of business and professional offices, uses with higher intensity multifamily residences, which would be Optoma, and other compatible uses in a planned park-like setting. Planned park-like, park, I don't think they're talking about industrial parks. The district is intended to serve the village and the surrounding urban area because of the unique character of properties, unique character properties located within the district and the proximity to, and it mentions the proximity to the Forest Preserve District and adjacent residential municipalities. All properties within the district are required site plan approval, which means because of the unique character, they want it park-like, it's next to the Forest Preserve, everything has to be approved by you guys to start out with. And it says that the burden of proof has to be, of course, on the Carvana for providing evidence and persuasion. And to go with what Asher said, in some sense, if we're opening the door to more Carvanas, more dealerships. And the only thing I see about industry is in Appendix A, and it mentions something about construction and all this, the industry, but it says only for offices. So if you look at Appendix A, you could have an office for a slaughterhouse as long as the slaughterhouse is located 100 miles away. You get offices for anything, but I don't see any place where it says industry. I mean, I read this, I know there's a heading that says it's listed in industrial, but I see nothing beyond that talking about industry. And I also finally want to cope with what Ashley said about you're changing it forever. It's not just for Carvana now, it's Carvana 10 years, it's other places that may come in. And in a sense, when you buy your property.
Could you?
Oh.
Yes, thank you.
My glasses.
I know, I have the same problem.
Within 6 feet. Okay, the thing I'm concerned about is when you buy your property, like Asher bought in 2006, I moved in 2018, you buy it, you have a trust with the city that you look up OR zoning, you see what it is, and you kind of put down maybe a good portion of your life savings based on the trust of the village that the zoning will stay like it is. I can understand little changes and tweaks, but this is totally out of character with what has been. It's a betrayal of trust. If you change the zoning like this, you're betraying the trust of all the owners who relied on the word of Skokie as to what the zoning will be.
All right, I think you made your point.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hi, good evening.
Hi, my name is Lynn Freeman, and I'm a resident at the Oak Building. I'm actually delivering this for my husband, Toby Bernstein, because...
Speak a little bit closer to your... A little closer to the mic. Pull it down.
Sorry.
There you go.
Now? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. I'll start. I'm Lynn Freeman. I live in Oak with my husband, who I'm delivering his remarks because unfortunately he could not make it here tonight. So as longtime residents of Optoma Complex in Skokie, my husband and I object to the zoning chapter amendment, or the zoning text amendment. We believe it will have a negative impact throughout the Office Research District, including Woods Drive. We also believe this proposal is apparently only happening now because Carvana requested it, and it needs to happen. We object because while Carvana has a pressing need for the zoning change to happen in order to locate itself here, we don't believe that the district needs or benefits from having Carvana here. Carvana is projecting that the city could receive $9 million in revenues over a 10-year period. This is a projection only and does not factor in the revenues that the city could generate from having alternative, more suitable commercial projects in this location. The existing zoning for this district is compatible for the types of buildings and commercial properties which prior village planners and boards of trustees believed to be appropriate. With the rezoning of the district, it may be more difficult for the village to attract new commercial tenants and businesses. We do not see in the Planning Commission analysis where these concerns have been taken into consideration. As to Carvana site plan approval request, we object to Carvana car tower. Our objection is based upon Carvana's own information and reflected in the Planning Commission's recommendations. Skip over some. Carvana has presented traffic studies and made claims that there will be minimal impact on traffic, noise, light, and other factors impacting the area. Carvana's operations require their car tower to be stocked and restocked continuously. In order to make this happen, Woods Drive will, in effect, be converted into a thoroughfare for the most massive of heavy-duty multi-car carrying trailer trucks. Woods Drive is a two-lane road which has car and light-duty traffic truck only. Allowing car-carrying trailer trucks on Woods Drive would present numerous logistical, public safety, and environmental impact concerns. Carvana's application and the Planning Commission recommendations do not adequately address these concerns. Lastly, Carvana's proposed car tower would be simply too close, perhaps within 250 feet of the Optoma residential complex, where approximately 1,500 Skokie residents call their home. Finally, this immediate area consists of the Holocaust Museum, a 600-unit densely populated residential complex, a preschool and daycare center, medical suites, office buildings, and forest, Lifetime Fitness, and forest preserves directly abutting Woods Drive with bike, horse, and walking trails. A car tower is completely unsuitable and inappropriate for this location. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Paul Crystal, and like the other people, I live in the buildings that we're talking about. Many of the friends and maybe some of you folks in the audience there have the impression that you, the city of Skokie, have pretty well decided that the project will go ahead as required by these folks. And I looked at that and I thought about that and I talked to these people about it and I didn't get anywhere. So I decided, let's look at what would happen if what everybody's talking about. If all of a sudden Carvana is successful and they're building this tower. Let's start at the bottom. Last time I was here, I asked the question, have any soil borings been taken? I haven't heard from anybody. I walk by there 3 times a day, and I didn't see where any borings had been taken. Have borings been taken?
That's not part of the process. Yeah, currently.
Should be.
What?
That,
It's not part of the process.
It's not part of their process.
It's not part of their process.
It's not part of their process.
Oh, are you saying that you're building the building on a flat slab?
no, sir, what I'm saying is that, sir, please address the commission. They can't do anything on a property because they don't have any permits to do it. They can't get permits until they get this.
You know, I've
this
been
up.
on a lot of high-rise jobs, and I've never seen one that's taken so long to get a reasonable idea what's down there.
Well, they can't do that until they pull permits.
All right, let's go at it this way. What are Skokie's reports on the lower levels of the ground here?
Sir, the village does not own that property. We can't go digging there.
I'm not asking to go there. I'm asking what happened when you dug for our building?
Well, that's with your builder. That's not with us.
You didn't inspect it? You didn't have people
Yeah,
out there
well,
watching what he
It's
did?
built, so I guess it was approved.
It was just approved?
Or else it
I
would
guess
be-
that explains why we have so much trouble with the building we're in now.
Well, that's,
All
you'll
right,
have to,
that answered my question. Has Carvana built any of these structures anywhere
sir,
else?
sir,
in the-
sir, would you please address the commission?
Okay, you.
Yes, they have built these. There's a number of them throughout the country.
What?
There's a number of them throughout the country.
I understand that.
Recently, they opened one up in Richmond, Virginia.
Yeah, I'd like to know how many they built that were on sand.
I don't know.
Do they know?
They may know. Sir, I think you're asking questions that'll be difficult for this commission to answer.
Well, I'm asking the questions because we're in an area where there's considerable amount of clay in the ground.
Well, sir, that is not our purview.
Yeah, but why do we want to take the chance?
We're not taking chances here.
Okay, can I tell you where you're taking a chance?
Sure.
If you don't go down deep enough and you go through a clay layer, you could have a reserve and it would cause big problems.
Well, those problems are not under the purview of this commission. Thank you.
I'm not done. Will Carvana build this building with their own forces?
Sir, again, that question is not within the purview of this commission.
What do I have to do? Talk like a lawyer to get
No, you're not,
respect?
sir, we're not construction engineers.
I'm not either.
Well, you're asking the wrong questions to the wrong people.
Who do I ask?
You can refer to the building department.
I'm asking this because I want to know if there's...
But what I'm saying is that we're not experts. We can't tell you.
All right, let me go to the next one. Are competitive bids... Oh,
Sir?
wait a minute. No, never mind. No, I guess you're not concerned with what goes on in your own area. I'm concerned with it because I live next door to it.
We have a building department for that, but right now, they don't have this case.
Just a practical thing. What if one of these things tips over because it's improperly built? Would you want to know what could prevent that?
Sir, again, we're not experts.
Hi, my name's Julie.
Would you please step up to the microphone?
Yeah, my name's Julie. I am not a resident of Woods Drive, so let me put that out there. I am a resident of Skokie. I have been a resident almost 60 years in Skokie, in various parts of Skokie. And unfortunately, this is coming at a really bad time to get my neighbors active in this conversation. So I'm representing Skokie in terms of non-resident. Take a step back. You've heard a lot of emotions in this room as the zoning commission. They're saying, look, the buck stops with you to grant this variance
The
that's
buck
being
does not
requested.
stop with us.
Well-
We're just a recommending body to the Board of
That's what I mean
Trustees.
in terms of the recommendation.
Yes.
Many times that the recommendations do go forward, especially in Skokie, being a resident. I've seen it in my neighborhood. I've made requests. I've had them honored. I've had situations that I've needed variance done, and I've had them the requests done. So what I'm asking you to is just take a step back. You hear a lot of emotions in this room of what these residents feel like in terms of the devastation. to their community. Now, I drive up and down this highway nonstop. I can tell you that one of the reasons that they're looking for the zoning, and that's why you had this really big, important presentation, is because they want the lights on. Doesn't matter if it's blue lights, red lights, green lights, they want the signage. They want people to notice that we are 15 stories, 14 stories high, when really right now, if you look around the country, they're 8. I am very concerned because I am one of those drivers who can get distracted. I drive to Naperville, I see the Oak Brook lit up, and I tend to shift off. Imagine you're driving and you tend to shift off just for moment. That moment can create an accident, and I know I've weaved because I've gotten distracted. I've never been ticketed, I have a clean record, and yet I know, and I can honestly say, from a psychological point, that there's a distraction. Now you've got high school drivers, and when they really want them is at night, when you've got all this lit up, and it's very close to the highway, it's very close to the residents. So what I'm asking is this commission is to take a step back. Imagine you're living in the conditions that all these residents who came forward with their passion, their hearts, are feeling about the property values. And you're being given basically a song and a dance from a company that is $22 billion, so they've got plenty of it, to then show you what you need to see in order to you to go through with this recommendation. I implore you to make it either to pause and allow other residents in Skokie to get involved, and to look at the passion in this room, and to look at what would it be like for you, knowing your property value is going to go down, knowing that safety is going to be a factor, knowing that
Okay.
the zoning. So this is what I ask you to do,
We
is
do
take
take
a
these
look.
factors into consideration.
Okay, so that's what I'm asking you,
Yes.
to listen to these residents.
We do listen. Thank you.
My name is Maureen Rich, and I missed the yellow sheet.
I
So
have it
I
here.
would,
You can sign up. You didn't miss anything.
but
go
I
ahead.
just have a very brief,
That's
oh, is that okay?
perfect.
Okay. My name is Maureen Rich, and I live at 9715 Woods Drive, Unit 906, and I am on the board of the Elm Building. And Asher has spoken very eloquently for us, but I just have something very brief to add. When we moved into Skokie in 2007, I was not happy, but my husband, who had Parkinson's disease, fell in love with the Optoma building. So we moved. I grew to love the Skokie community very much. I was a teacher in Evanston and a principal, and so it was very convenient. And the building became my home. We could look out our window and see the tranquil woods and the pastoral setting of the horseback riders riding through the woods, and the deer families in the woods. It was very soothing for a man who was suffering with a horrific disease. At night, when we would come home from being out, we would go very slowly down Woods Drive to make sure that we would not hit a deer family running across the woods. With Carvana coming into our property, or onto our property, the heavy trucks going back and forth, and possibly the widening of Woods Drive, what would happen to the tranquility and a peaceful environment that we have come to know and love? I would ask you not to redistrict our home and not allow Carvana to build next to our property. I love living in Skokie, and I work, and I want to keep that feeling. Carvana can set up home where it is good for commercial business, but not in my backyard.
Thank you. Okay,
Hey, one question,
no, before you come up, I have these two ladies here. If anybody else wants to speak, please come up now, because after this, will be it. Anybody else? Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
That's okay. My name is Minna Einhorn. I live in Maple. I've lived in Skokie for almost 60 years. I've watched Skokie come from a very vibrant, wonderful neighborhood to, I don't know what's happening. And now my one question is, what does Carvana have to offer our community? I don't hear anything. 30 jobs doesn't mean a thing. Possibility of sales tax, which is just a possibility. So I want to know what they have to offer us. I've heard only things that they've counteracted negatively. Thank you.
Thank you.
Last one. Hi, my name is Chanel John, and I live at Optoma along with my husband and a dog, and my mom also owns a unit at Optoma. So I lived in Skokie for over 20 years. I grew up here, I got married here, and my husband and I run a business in Skokie called T-Rex Bubble Tea, and it's literally across from Optoma building. And when I first got married, we actually moved to Glenview for a year, but I didn't really like it. So I asked my husband if he's willing to move to Skokie, and he said okay. So we started looking into places, and one of them was Optoma. And when we were looking, when we were doing the home tour, we literally just fell in love because it was quiet. It had forest preserve right in front, and it had Optoma offered amenities that we both like, such as like swimming pool or workout center and all that. And when we purchased this house, so we put in an offer this year of August, and we moved in October. So it really happened fast because that's how much we loved it. And when we got this house, the reason we bought this house was because it was very close to our dream house. And people don't buy a house thinking, oh, we're just gonna, move to another house within a year. We bought this house so that we can grow old together in this house. And when we bought this house, we didn't know Carvana was gonna come in. And nobody buys a house of their dream house and picture, oh, Carvana's gonna be next to it. So, I mean, Mr. Chairman and all the commissioners here, just imagine your dream house or your forever house with your family. Do you picture your dream house or forever house next to being a Carvana? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, does anybody want to sign up now on this sheet? We still have, okay. Yeah, there's one at the back table, you can sign up later on. Okay. I thank you for all your comments. But now, it's time for a motion on case 2021, excuse me, I forgot.
Yeah.
Ms. Pugh, would you please come up to the podium? Ms. Pugh?
Yes.
Do you have any closing comments?
Brett Sassenberg does.
Okay, please. Yes.
Before we do that, can we call architect George to I have some questions.
Yes, you can.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
What is the real distance between the Carvana and the Optima building, do you know?
What is I'm sorry?
What is the distance?
The distance? So, as the crow flies, about 190 feet.
Okay, and you mentioned something in your presentation about the recycling plant. Is it recycling plant, you have it on a premises over there?
I'd have to defer to Brett on the recycling.
Something I see there on your presentation.
Right, Carvana has a recycling program.
Okay. Now, you also heard from the Maple Tower president, Mr. Asser, if you have to change your route for your trucking, are you willing to do that?
I would again have to defer to Brett Sassenberg on that.
Thank you, George. Commissioner Luke, members of the commission. We looked at the routing of the truck, and what we are trying to do is circulate. We're not driving past Optima. I think that was made clear in our presentation. We don't drive beyond the property boundary coming from the north to the south. We wanted to enter and do a U around the back of our building to not have to reverse at all, because obviously those trucks have enunciators when you reverse, the beeping. So being that close on remember, if Optima's on a podium, so there's 2 levels of garage before you get to the first residential unit. With our landscape, I don't think the delta between the center drive or the furthest drive made the difference. So we wanted to come in and circulate and go out and around. So, could we go in reverse, come to the middle, drive out and around? Sure, it doesn't change that we have to get closer to the property on our private property to get back to woods. But again, remember, the first unit is on the 3rd floor, so it's well above. And obviously, they've got soundproof doors and windows, so it's not that ambient decibel rating goes directly into the home. I just don't want to back the trucks up, because you will hear that. That beeping in Houston, for example, one of the residents mentioned issues in Houston. We used to back that truck up because that is just a wood fence between the residence and our property. Working with that neighbor, we ensured that we never did that. And going forward, when we design all of our stores, we try to circulate, so we do not put it in reverse.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Did you have some closing remarks? Oh, sir.
So, folks from
Jeff,
Optima,
microphone.
it's on. Have a good point about what's your forecast over the next 10 years in terms of unit sales relative to truck deliveries? And we're talking anywhere between 3 and 6 a day today. For let's say 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, what are we looking at a day?
Yeah, I can't speak to the specifics of that now. I don't have that data point in front of me. We can get that prepared. We hope we're successful. That generates tax revenues for you, and it generates revenues for us. Obviously, the vehicles have to come to us in that format like any other dealer. But again, they're primarily during the day when folks are at work or at least away from the property. The closest units to our property would be the most impacted, so it's not all 600 units. And I do respect every unit dweller there, please believe me. But we don't impact 100% of the 600 units. We are only impacting those directly adjacent to our parcel. But we don't unload and offload like most dealers in the public right-of-way. We are trying to do it on our property. So it's during the day, it's at the back of the property, furthest from the majority, if not 95% of the residential units. Again, because they're 3 and up, at some point those decibels start to dissipate as they climb. So we really looked at this carefully to impact the least amount of folks during the day. Again, it's not dark 30 in the middle of the night. We're not backing it up. It is a function of our business, like any other business has deliveries, whether it's Cisco to a restaurant or an office has FedEx coming all day in and out. It's just part and parcel. One of the members mentioned, or excuse me, residents mentioned the overflow of some of their deliveries onto that parcel. It's unavoidable for us, but we believe we've tried to mitigate to the degree we can for 95% of those residents.
One other question too is, I think there's a great point. We have another condominium complex in the village that has a large restaurant chain in its parking lot, and they get night deliveries, and it's a constant problem with complaints to the village. So is there a cutoff in terms you're willing to give relative to deliveries?
Absolutely. I'd like some time between now and the board to work. So we have to map a store logistically first. I can't speak to yet the routing, but yes, we have done that in the past, and we can do that here.
I believe you said 200 plus parking spots is what's going to be built there. What is the plan for that? I mean, I think we said 30 employees, 30
So those
job
are
creations.
Commissioner Luke, Commissioner.
Yes.
The 200 spots, there's the balance of the 5 acres, so that's going to be for expansion as we grow. But we take cars in, so either to trade or someone's selling to us. You can also just sell your car without buying from us. And that inventory needs to be parked and per the the ordinances that we require to meet, they need to be in a spot. They can't be stacked or staggered. Then you've got the employees, so you've got new arrival vehicles going out to customers, trades, sell to Carvanas, and then anything that missed a truck because it's going to a different route. So it's for the expansion of our growth as we grow in the market.
Any other questions? Sir, are you finished with your present?
If you have any further questions, please, I would love to help answer.
I don't think we do. Do we? No. Okay.
Commissioner Luke, Commissioner, thank you so much for
Thank
your
you very much.
consideration.
Okay. Yes.
I just have a question. It's not really of the gentleman, but, I mean, everybody's unhappy with the Carvana approach, but, I mean, it was actually pretty well demonstrated that what could go there is much more extreme, and so I'm just curious.
No, much more likely, if a developer comes in, other than Carvana, if they're gonna build something, they're gonna wanna build something that fits with our building, because if it doesn't fit with our building, it won't fit with their building, and they're not gonna be able to sell anything or
Okay.
make use of it. Only Carvana, who doesn't have
All
any
right.
residents, are gonna be
Jeff,
going in.
you want to carry on this question, line of questioning?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
Think that we are not happy if you approve
Okay.
this.
All right.
And we vote.
We do. Sorry, I wanna clarify one thing.
Would you come up to the podium?
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. I want to clarify just two things. One, the cities that they use as recommendations, Memphis, Cleveland, Houston. Houston's the fourth biggest city in this country. So to compare urban developments like that, or urban cities like that to Skokie, quite a difference, so I don't know why they're using that as the example. And then two, I dare anyone on the board to drive up to Woods right now between Gulf and Old Orchard and look at the infrastructure and see if that is suitable for a big commercial used car lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. Commissioners, please. Commissioners, I'm open for a motion on case. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were finished.
Oh, no, actually, we are.
You are finished.
All done.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Correct, yes.
So it seems like there's several things that are kind of open issues before this goes before the trustees, assuming we vote favorably, one of which is looking at the migratory bird issue relative to lights and glass, and the other is at least a cutoff on deliveries after a given hour. And I'm still not thoroughly convinced that there isn't a way to move the truck traffic on the lot in a way that gets them further from Optima.
Well, I believe those issues can be worked out prior to the Board of Trustees meeting.
So how do we put that into the report or the motion, or amend the motion?
That
such
motion would have to come up on the site plan approval.
Okay.
And you'd also mentioned dimming the lights.
Okay. So, okay. Order, please. Point of order. Okay, so I have case 2021-24P on the floor for the motion.
Mr. Chairman, she has to review the closing.
She's done.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
So is that the one where I can put the amendments to the motion, or?
No, no, this is
25.
just a text amendment.
The
Jeff.
text amendment, okay. So
Okay.
this is site plan approval?
Yeah, you need to put that in the site plan approval.
Okay.
Yes.
Motion to approve 2021-24P.
Commissioner Matei, thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Franklin? Okay. Commissioner Mitchell is absent, Commissioner Quinn is absent, Commissioner Shaw.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Franklin.
Aye.
Commissioner Giovanni.
No.
Okay. Commissioner Lakani.
Aye.
Commissioner Berman.
Aye.
Commissioner Matei.
Aye.
And I'll vote no. Okay. Motion passes on a vote of 5-2. On case 2021-25P, site plan approval at 9801 Woods Drive. Jeff, this is where you would insert your,
Okay, so I would amend the motion to require some resolution in terms of light mitigation during migratory bird season on the lights, either dimming or turning them off, using a suitable glass, and also cut off for deliveries after a certain hour. That's to be determined and approved, and routing of truck traffic to minimize as much noise and disturbance as possible.
okay,
That's a motion to approve with those conditions.
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, the garbage ones.
In the
so
garbage,
Standard
yeah,
garbage
yeah.
provision.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Shaw.
I apologize, could I hear the amendments again?
It was light mitigation, cut off a delivery time, looking at moving the truck routes to minimize the sounds, and the garbage being, what was the requirement, the standard garbage condition that they be checked and cleaned.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Call for the vote. Commissioner Shaw,
No.
Commissioner Franklin,
Yes, with all of the
amendments.
amendments.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Giovanni,
No.
okay. Commissioner Lakani,
Yes.
Commissioner Berman,
Yes with the amendments.
Commissioner Matei,
Yes with amendments.
and I'll vote yes. Okay. So the motion to approve case 2021-25P passes on a vote of 5 ayes and 2 nays. Okay. Is there any, and again, this case has to go before the Board of Trustees for final approval.
And it's going to go to court.
Uh,
And also, if this is approved, many
If
people.
your name's on the list, you'll be notified when the case will go before the board.
You just turned us to the Western Avenue, Chicago.
Is there,
Thank you.
Not only us.
is there any other actions before the board?
Thank you for.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming, and have a safe drive home.
We understand.
What about